lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
Half-second lead over the sizzling car in the background.
He hasn't, oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the AMS Oz GT3 World Challenge. Been on a little bit of a hiatus for the last couple of weeks, but it's great to be back in the commentary box and looking forward to the next couple of rounds. The final two rounds of the season is taking place in the United States. So tonight, the challenging Circuit of the Americas in Texas plays host to a 90-minute endurance race for round number 8, and in a couple of weeks' time we head about 1,260 odd miles due northeast of here for the final round and 2-hour event at Road America. For the moment though, we've got a title to decide, and at the moment at the top of the standings, just 19 points separates the top three. We'll get to that in just a moment. As per usual, my name's Steve DeVries, aka Nether, from the Apex Rear Wing commentary team and also from AMS Oz. Looking like this is going to be another solo effort from myself this particular week. Bagsy, who normally is here with me, last time he was on holiday in Bali, and I'm wondering whether he's still there or whether he's just forgotten to come home, because he's not here at the moment. But for the moment, it's a solo effort, or planning on being a solo effort. Well, let's have a look at the calendar, because this is where we've been and where we've still got to go. A little bit of a change there with the bottom three circuits. You'll note that we were meant to be racing the Circuit of the Americas as round 7, which the circuit wasn't fully prepared by that particular date. So Interlagos came forward for round 7, pushing Circuit of the Americas back to the 8th place on the calendar. Road America still bringing up the last race of the season. 3 race wins for Lewis Wedding out of that calendar. So he's won the first race, he won the 4th race, and he won the 7th race. There's a bit of a pattern there if you haven't spotted it already. And race wins also to Jamie Snow, Brendan Ross, Greg Nangle, and Brenton Foley on the season as well. And only 2 more possibilities for a race win this season. Which brings us to the race tonight. 90 minutes, as we said. 5.5 kilometre, 20 turn Circuit of the Americas circuit. Great circuit. Been on the Formula One calendar for a little while now. It's probably one of the most challenging circuits that these cars and drivers will face this particular season. A number of corners modelled on circuit corners from Silverstone, from Brazil, from Germany, and from Turkey. As well as a number of other turns. Very, very challenging. The elevation change to turn 1, very, very interesting. 133 feet of elevation change from the start-finish line all the way up to the top of turn 1. A very challenging corner. We'll have a look at that a bit later on as well. Plenty of passing opportunities as well. The lap times that we're seeing at the moment, about 41 to 45 laps we expect the distance to be. And we're going in the anti-clockwise direction. The last of the circuits on the calendar to go in an anti-clockwise direction. Driver points, well, as we said, at the top of the standings, it's Lewis Wedding from Brendan Ross and Brenton Foley. Those 3 are the title protagonists that we are expecting. Rob's still mathematically in this, but he would really need the top 3 to absolutely fall off a cliff and not score any points in the next 2 races. And on top of that, he'd need to win both races. So while mathematically he's still there, realistically, he's looking at keeping his margin over Jamie Snow and Greg Nangle for 4th place at the moment. That gap at the top was only 10 points heading into the last race at Brazil, at the Interlagos circuit, which Lewis Wedding won, and as a result he'd stretched his lead over the remaining 3, or stretched the gap out of the 3 from 10 points to 19 points. Brenton Foley was the real loser out of that particular race, having an early race spin and finishing well down the order. Didn't finish on the podium that particular race, so hence his points have suffered and his championship has taken a little bit of a hit, but he's still in with a shot. A couple of drivers down there that had some good races. Well, Will Devonish and Steve Bolger. Steve Bolger had one of his best races of the season last time out at the Interlagos circuit with a 4th place finish. He was looking set to challenge Brendan Ross for 3rd place in that particular race as well, but a late race tangle between those two ultimately saw him finish 4th. He's actually had 2 4th places on the season, has Steve Bolger, but that was probably his best drive out of the lot last round in Brazil. Well, with that aside, we're just waiting on the last of the drivers to get into the race session, and then we will be ready to go. The warm-up session, practice session looks like it's just come to a conclusion, and at the top of the timesheets, it's a man we haven't seen for a little while, Andy Simpson, a 2:02.7, and that's a blisteringly quick lap in the Ferrari. The only Ferrari in the field, the 488 actually. We had a couple of 458s in the hands of Brock Harvey and Mike Coulston a bit earlier on in the season. They haven't been able to take part due to some real life commitments. So they are the ones that weren't doing too badly actually. We haven't seen them probably since about the Monza or Le Mans rounds. Just looking through my standings here just to see where they were. Yeah, Brock Harvey's last round was actually the Japanese round in round 4. And looking down Mike Coulston, we haven't seen since the opening round in Barcelona. So Andy Simpson actually took part in the Barcelona round as well, but we hadn't seen him since that time either. Well, cars starting to cycle out onto the pit apron, waiting for the green light for the qualifying session. Brenton Foley, there he is. And look at this this change in elevation. We just spoke about it a few moments ago. 133 feet from the start-finish line all the way up to turn 1. And surprise, surprise, Brenton Foley, the man coming out first to try and set a qualifying lap. And already having a little bit of an issue, just trying to light it up on the exit of turn 1. Put some substantial heat into those tyres. I haven't heard any reports of any tyre wear problems or getting tyres up to temperature trouble. Although just looking at how some of the corners are being taken here through the first couple of corners would make you wonder if they just have to be a bit careful through some parts of the circuit. They don't pick up a track cut. A couple of drivers have already mentioned a few track violation issues with trying to perfect their laps in the practice session. But so far, no troubles in the track violations for this man. And before we go too much further as well, I'd like to put out a big thank you to Lewis Wedding for his efforts in getting this circuit up and running. The track cameras that were originally packaged with this version of the circuit were quite poor and not really good broadcastable cameras, but he's done some great work and has got the broadcast cameras looking absolutely schmick. So thank you very much to Lewis. He's actually going to be hopefully along a little bit later in this particular qualifying session. He's had a couple of issues with his sim racing rig that he's just trying to sort out, and he probably is going to need another 5 minutes or so. So very, very touch and go in terms of being able to make the qualifying session. With a bit of luck, he will make it before qualifying is out. Otherwise, he's going to be starting from the back, but is set to take part tonight. Championship leader. As we stay with our currently 3rd placed man in the standings, Brenton Foley. Only one race win on the season so far, the Abu Dhabi round, back at round 6, the 2-hour endurance event in Twilight at Abu Dhabi. Let's stay with the Bentley Continental man as we listen to the awesome noise that engine makes across the start finish line, and we'll go for a bonnet ride with Brenton Foley up to turn 1. 133 feet elevation change, braking at the 100 metre board. Back in, trying to step away a little bit. Get on the power, nice. Down the hill through turn 2. The right-hander. Now turn 3, 4 and 5 and to a degree 6 as well. Bit of throttle modulation required here. These corners based on the Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel complex of Silverstone. Turn 7 through the left-hander and now through 8 and 9. Modelled on the Senna S at Brazil, but obviously going uphill instead of downhill. And now falling off the edge of the world, as it's called, through turn 10. High speed, under the Johnny Walker Bridge. Hardest stop on the circuit, or one of the 2 hardest stops on the circuit for turn 11, the hairpin. Ooh, quite aggressive on the hairpin there too, Brenton Foley. And now on the power, hard right foot buried into the firewall as they head up to top speed down this back straight, coming down the hill towards the next hardest stopping point on the circuit, the tight apex at turn 12, the left-hander, braking at the 150 board. Plenty of braking room required here. Through the left-hander, now on to turn 13. These corners modelled on the Hockenheim Arena section in Germany, just not the same high speed, but the same sort of layout. Now swinging through turn 15 and 16, and now up to probably what is one of the best corners on the circuit, the 17-18 complex, modelled after the Istanbul Park turn 8. Just going the opposite direction. 2 more remaining. Penultimate corner, turn 19. Clip the inside apex, use all the available road. Braking for the final corner. Turn 20. Through the left-hander. Foley sets a benchmark time of a 2:02.242. Lots of twos in that one. Great job from the PBF race engineering driver. Similar time that we saw Andy Simpson put down in the practice session. It'll be interesting to see where he's at the moment. Let's see what we've got. And actually, speak of Andy Simpson, he's just on his out lap at the moment. A number of drivers just taking their lap times at the moment. Lime Mitch goes up into P2 and immediately surpassed by Josh Ben. He's had some trouble getting into the server in the last half an hour or so. Next man to cross the line is Will Devonish, goes to P2. And just while we have a little break in proceedings here, I'm reliably informed that I've been joined by Matt Scruff Williams in the box. Are you with me here, Scruff?
I certainly am, Neda. How are you?
Good to see you again. We haven't done some GT3 commentary for quite some time, so it says here you've come, but you need a towel. What's going on?
Well, I mean, I have come.
All right, we'll leave it at that then, I think. That's
really hoping that you'd do that before the intro.
That's enough said. Definitely enough said, I think. It's been a warm day down here in Melbourne for a winter's day, to be perfectly honest with you, so it wouldn't surprise me if one needs a towel. Anyway, we're just watching Andy Simpson now come...
I won't elaborate on that.
No, we won't be going any further than that. Well, we're just watching Andy Simpson now start his first flying lap as he comes through the S's. Just to his driver's left is the big observation tower. Sure, a number of people will be up there watching from on high. The cars at their absolute limit going through these corners. Andy Simpson nearly 3/10 down on the Brenton Foley time at the moment, but set for a front row provisionally if he can keep this together. We haven't seen, as we've seen Andy Simpson for quite some time in GT3 competition. We did see him back at the very, very first round of the season at Barcelona. We haven't seen him since. Obviously doing in real life, Toyota 86 series and a bunch of other things as well. So good to have him back. Good to see a good healthy turnout here as well. But the one person that we are struggling to see when he gets here, Scruff, is Lewis Wedding. He's been having some dramas with his rig. Hopefully he makes qualifying, but if he doesn't, he's going to be starting at the back. But he's got one quick McLaren, hasn't he?
Yeah, Lewis, not 100% sure what he is up to there. He's making changes or something with his rig, but hopefully be here by the end of warm-up, ready to race. Hopefully he's actually done some laps, because despite how freakishly good he is at getting into a car and being fast straight away, he still does need a few laps just to get his eye in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Andy Simpson's actually probably rolled out of this lap because he was nearly 3 seconds down at the second timing intermediate on this particular lap and going very wide there off the exit of turn 18. So I think this lap is definitely a throwaway for Andy Simpson. He's just going to warm himself up and get going again.
Yeah,
Brendan Ross.
Yeah, I've got to bring up the FCR car, obviously, but he's just about matched his PB time through the first sector, less than a tenth off it. He'll be hoping to get a good second sector in. Just really a good run into that long back straight is all you need to do to get a good second sector time.
That's right, and coming up to the second timing intermediate now, I just noticed that Brendan Ross had gone P2 provisionally as we were speaking, and just fractionally better on his PB, still a second off the current provisional pole time for Brenton Foley. Foley really did a really good flying lap and he's actually gone into the 201s now, Foley, so 201.7, so quicker again. Found another 5/10 on his first lap time, so that's the quickest times that we've seen so far across not only the practice sessions and race weekend as well, by some considerable margin. So what's Brennan Ross got in store through the second to last corner, and now down to the final left-hand bend? The start-finish line comes up fairly quickly off the final corner here, which is good. And he goes at 2:02.9, so found another half a second. Good job for Brendan Ross, but still at 1.2 seconds to Foley.
I'm a bit surprised at how big the gap is between those two at the moment. I think Rossi's got a bit more in the tank, but I'm not sure if he'll be able to match Foley. He's got good race pace though, does Ross, so that will be one to watch later on.
Yeah, that's the true thing that we get out of practice, is we tend to see early in the practice sessions what everyone's true race pace is going to be. They're all running full fuel, and then the quick laps start to come toward the end of the practice session in preparation for qualifying. It's kind of a routine that's all too familiar to predict here at AMS Oz with regards to how the drivers treat their warm-up sessions. Everybody's on a nose to get the proper practice for the race out of the way first, and then spend your last 10 or 15 minutes trying to wring the neck of these cars with a low fuel load in preparation for setting yourselves up for best position on the track to begin the race. Rolling start, don't forget, here in GT competition. Will Devonish currently was P3, has been supplanted by Andy Simpson now into P3, so it's currently provisionally 4th. His time through the second timing intermediate is good. It's very good. It's only 7/10 off the poleman time. It's actually 6.5 on his PB, so that'll be set to move him ahead of Simpson at this particular rate if he can keep it going. Left through turn 15, 16, and now through the Istanbul replica, just going the opposite direction. Turn 17 and 18. Having to get a little bit of brake going through that corner as well. I just saw the brake lights light up on the Lamborghini. 2 more corners to go, or now 1 more corner to go. What has the Lamborghini driver got in store for the timesheets this time around? And it's going to be a 2:02.8. So found some more time, jumps up onto the front row provisionally. Good lap, found some good time in that final sector. So, and actually just ahead of Brendan Ross by less than 1/10 of a second too. So, and Andy Simpson, don't count him out. He's only a further 1/10 back, or 1300ths back. So, very, very tight for those minor placings at the moment. But Foley's still the man to catch.
Yeah, gap between second and 4th is very close. I'm not sure how that'll translate in a race, though. I think Simpson, if you go off his initial practice times, he does seem to have some very good race pace. But we've seen before from him that he is driving 110% the whole time and does make mistakes. So that could be an interesting battle as it goes on throughout the race if they stay together.
It could be. Andy Simpson's best time in the practice session was a 2:02.7. His qualifying time at the moment is a 2:02.9. So he's definitely got a little bit more provisionally. If he could replicate that lap, he'd be on the front row, Andy Simpson. All he needs is 1.5 and he's ahead of Devonish and Brendan Ross in a heartbeat. Osrob had gone 5th for a minute. Steve Bolgers then wrestled that position back from him for P5 and 6 provisionally.
Good session so far from Bolger.
Yeah, as we just mentioned at the broadcast, he was having probably his best race. You've got him on screen here in the Lamborghini, the number 87. He was probably having his best race of the season at Interlagos a few weeks ago. He's got 2 4th places on the season. One was there, and the other 4th place on the season for him was back at the 3rd round in Le Mans. But his race at Interlagos was definitely a very mature drive, and he was really going to challenge Brendan Ross for that 3rd place finish, but they just came together with about 10 or so minutes to go from home, and he was having a little bit of a look at him down at turn number 4, put a wheel on the grass, clattered into the back of the Mercedes, and ultimately the positions that they finished in 3rd and 4th on the road. He's found some real pace in this Lamborghini and some real confidence in the last couple of weeks. I wouldn't put it past him that he's probably benchmarking himself against what Will's been doing over the last couple of rounds as well, and shown some real maturity in the last few races, and looking quite handy at the moment for P5, and got 4/10 on Osrob behind, who's actually just fractionally ahead of Heath Dixon as well. So have a look at this battle here, Scruff, for probably 6th, 7th and 8th provisionally on the grid as well. There's a 10th and a half in that battle too. So again, some more positions that can change in the blink of an eye. And talking about the blink of an eye, there's only a minute and 40 seconds remaining. So this qualifying session has really gone quick.
The full tenths between Bolger and Ozrob, when you go onto race trim after qualifying, that is equivalent to being the exact same time. There is almost no difference there in terms of the gap between them. As Bolger goes a lot faster, he's now only 2 tenths off Ross.
Yeah, he had a very, very quick first sector there, Steve Bolger. Flying lap there. So you're right, he's moved very, very close. Let's see if he can get a readout on the timing intermediate as he comes up through here. 31.6 is actually 31.682 is comparable to Will Devonish in talking Lamborghini comparisons.
Sorry, Nether, we just had Ross come through the first sector, 10th and a half up on his PB and 2 tenths down on Foley, so this could be a good lap coming in here for Ross.
We'll keep an eye on to him then at the back end of this lap because we've only got 35 seconds left on the clock and there's a number of drivers sitting in the pits. So Brian Walsh won't have any further laps, neither will Ozrob or Heath Dixon. They're done, so they can't move up any further. So to Glenn Miles and Rhodey, no further improvement there.
Devonish, Ben and Foley.
Oh, and we've had a spin for Steve Bolger. Sorry, Scruff, and Steve Bolger's out. So that's his next shot at moving up the order done. And actually just did it just in front of where Brennan Ross is just coming through as well now. And Brennan Ross, he's still close to his PB time, but he's lost out. So he's lost a fair bit of time. Yeah, I think he's given up on this one. Yep, he's had enough. And, straight into the fence. That just says enough. That's the frustration kicking in for Brennan Ross there. Who else we got on the circuit at the moment that's coming through? So the next man to come across was going to be Brennan Ross, so no more improvement from him. It'll be Will Devonish, followed by Ben.
Ben and Foley not too far behind them. Foley's just set a purple first sector as well, so it looks like he's on track to improve his time.
Well, if he wasn't on top by enough of margin already, he's looking set to extend that even further. The only men that can unseat him at the moment are the 2 men on track ahead of him. So this man here, Will Devonish, and you can see just there in the background, Josh Ben, he's campaigning the PBF Bentley normally run by Phil Boak, who's away this particular race weekend for the long weekend in Melbourne. Oh, Josh Ben's gone a little bit deep there at the turn 12 hairpin as well. And Devonish is not far away from his own PB, but he's 777 or 0.777 away from Foley's time. A little bit of wheel spin off of turn number 16 as well. Can he find a little bit of extra time? I don't think he's going to find the 1.1 seconds that he needs, Will Devonish, to improve upon Foley's time. But nonetheless, he's in the 202s, and he will start on the second row here, Devonish. So good result, and his lap time improves his PB to a 202.7. Great to see, and Josh Ben does a 205.3 that time around, so that little off-track excursion had cost him. Foley goes quicker by 76 thousandths, so shaves minuscule amounts off his time.
A paint of coat?
A paint of coat? Have you been drinking again?
That's my first drink I'm on for 2 weeks.
All right, I'll give it to you. A coat of paint. For Brenton Foley is what he's scraped off his time there. So a good result for Brenton Foley. So Foley on pole from Devonish, Brennan Ross and Andy Simpson on the second row, Bolger and Ozrob, Heath Dixon, Josh Ben, Lime Mitch, Brian Walsh, Glenn Miles and Rhodey is the race order. And we are still waiting to see if Lewis Wedding will make an appearance. We haven't haven't seen him just as yet.
I imagine he is negotiating the menus as we speak.
I would imagine you're probably right. Let me have a bit of a look through here and see what my screen can say. Yes, I think you are potentially right here, Scruff, because I looked to what we call Discord, and which is where we do not only our broadcast from, but also
I
everything.
didn't even think of that.
Yeah, where we do our broadcast from, but also where we do our briefings from as well. And I can see here it says Lewis W. playing
There we
Automobilista.
go.
So he's on his way, ladies and gentlemen, but he is going to have a hell of a task getting through all the cars and starting from the back from the Lewis
We
Simsport
don't
car.
know if he's done a single lap in the car around this track yet, so
Well, if he hasn't, he better get out there because he's currently sitting in the garage, as I can see. Well, we just take a short break here. Well, let's just digest what we've just seen in the qualifying session here, Scruff, because the man who had it all to do, or basically has it all to do, is Brenton Foley. He's the man third overall in the point standings. His championship took a hit last time out at Interlagos, a fifth place finish, which is not what he would have wanted. He had an early spin in the race and had to recover. So only got the 11 points for fifth place, and he finds himself third out of the title protagonists and 19 points behind Wedding. He's in front of him now, which is the important thing, and he's in front of Brendan Ross as well. So if he stays where he is, this championship could close up over these next 90 minutes. But I don't want to predict what's going to happen, but that's probably where our battle's going to be focused on, or our broadcast is going to be focused on, is where the leading three are and what points they currently have, because it'll set it all up nicely for Road America in a couple of weeks.
yeah, hopefully for a team owner perspective, Ross and Foley do help each other out a bit. And hopefully Lewis hasn't done a single lap, and we've got a good championship on for me and Rossi.
Well, when we look down the order as well, so let's discount the top three for the moment. We did talk about Rob. I'm going to put the points up just on the broadcast, just so people who are just tuning in for the next few minutes now can just see what we're on about here. So at the beginning of the last round, the point standings was actually Brendan Ross was first, Lewis Wedding was second, and Brenton Foley was third, and they were separated by 10 points between all of them. It was Brendan Ross with 109, Wedding with 105, and Wedding with 104, and Brenton Foley with 99. That was how they stand. Now it's flipped around the other way. Lewis Wedding on top with 129 by virtue of his win last time out. Brendan Ross with the third place finish, his third place of the season, now comes up with 125, and Foley with his fifth place finish with 110. So that's where they stand there. Now, we said before, Rob, he's there in fourth. There's a maximum 55 points still on the table. There's 25 points for a win in the 90-minute races. There's 30 points for a win in the 2-hour races, of which Road America, the final, is the last remaining 2-hour race. So Rob's mathematically still in with a chance. He needs the top three to fall off the road today to have any shot of being within a reaching distance or striking distance of the top three. So while we say mathematically he's still in the hunt, realistically it's the top three are pretty much the ones that we're going to be focused in on. Jamie Snow we haven't seen for a little while, neither Greg Nangle. I'm not sure what's happened to him. I believe Greg's had some work commitments, and we're not sure if Jamie Snow's met an untimely death the same way that we talk about it in the same breath as Corey Ott. Will Devonish...
Jamie is alive and well.
Jamie is alive and well. There we go. Sorry, Jamie. I've been proven wrong. Will Devonish and Steve Bolger, the two Lamborghini drivers, separated by 10 points there on the standings. They can potentially leapfrog Nangle tonight. Probably not so much Jamie Snow, but Will Devonish is the only man that probably could leapfrog Jamie Snow with a win if he was able to get ahead and stay ahead of Brenton Foley tonight. Doing quite well. Glenn Miles has been going along all right, despite the fact that he did have those 12 drive-throughs at the sixth race of the season at Abu Dhabi. He's just been clicking...
It's equivalent with the number of wides delivered by the West Indian bowlers the other night.
It was.
I've been wanting to make that comment for days. So.
There's only two races where Glenn Miles has failed to score points. So the second race of the season at Monza, he didn't partake and did not finish the Interlagos race last time out. So he's just been clicking along and picking up his points finishes. 2 7th places, his best finishes of the season. That's why he's inside the top 10. Brock Harvey surprisingly still inside the top 10, even though we haven't seen Brock since the Suzuka round in round 4. He's only done 3 rounds of the season, and 8th at Barcelona, 6th at Monza, sat out Le Mans by virtue of a penalty from the Monza race, and 7th place at the Japanese circuit, and we haven't seen him since, some real life commitments taking over his life. But he's still inside the top 10 now. Behind him, Phil Boak, who he said is not here. No, behind him, it's Phil Boak not here. The only man behind him who's here tonight, Heath Dixon, 24 points. So a points finish for Heath Dixon will leap him into the top 10 tonight. Rhodey's a bit further back, Brian Walsh a bit further back. We're not going to go into those particular point standings, but that is the way that the point standings are at the moment. Some nice battles in here as well that we're going to pay attention to tonight. Will Devonish, seeing what he can do. Has he got anything in store for Brenton Foley? Scruff, part of the season I've been looking at has just been how the good spread of winners that we've had. So we've only had one repeat winner in Lewis Wedding. He's won 3 races, and then the other 4 races have been shared between 4 drivers, which is good to see, and a good spread of podiums as well. The most prolific podium getter has been Brendan Ross. So he's got a 1 win, a 2nd place, and 3 third places. Lewis Wedding, 3 race wins, a 2nd and a 3rd. He's up there as well. So the usual suspects are at the top of the tree, but everything else been shared around, and good to see that that's what GT3's delivered in terms of giving us a good spread and giving us a good close battles coming down to the last couple of races of this season.
Yeah, it's been, I want to say a great championship, but after the way mine started and continued, it's hard for me to really look back on it with much fondness. But Rossi has done an amazing job after struggling his first 2 goes at GT3. And the closeness at the top of the championship is great to see as one of the people who does run the series. And then just, if you look through the top 10 on the points, everyone's got something to race for. They've all got championship position to gain. And 2 races left, that is great to see. It does motivate people to put in a little bit more work, and then you get cleaner racing, you get faster racing, and it's just better to watch for everyone. So it's been good to see in those aspects, just the way it's taken that turn after the effective dominance of Wedding over the first 2 seasons. Last season not winning it, but he did win every race he finished. So this year, I don't think he's actually DNF'd, and he's been pushed. The McLaren not up to scratch with the Mercedes and the Bentley, but he's been driving the absolute wheels off the thing, and it does show.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, speaking of, he has come out onto the circuit, so driver's briefing is over. So Lewis Wedding turning his first laps on the COTA circuit for tonight. And you're right, he hasn't DNF'd a single race. He's only missed 1 race, and that was the Le Mans race. Now, he also had a penalty hanging over from the Monza race as well. So Brock Harvey and himself were the 2 that were forced to sit that race out by virtue of some indiscretions at Monza. There was a couple of calamitous safety cars in that race, or calamitous incidents causing safety cars to come out. Unfortunately, he was one of the ones that made a little bit of an indiscretion and was forced to sit it out. Oh, let's just see that's Lime Mitch going off in the background, I believe. And he's gone back to the garage. No, he hasn't. There he is. There, we just saw him slide through the grass. Looks like the replay thing has just frozen a little bit there as we pick him up again. And let's see, what did you do here? Oh, he cut the corner in a big way, and then got a slapper on. And did he hit the wall? Yeah, it looks like he did.
Yeah, that one's definitely interesting. You can cut that corner a hell of a lot, but you're not quite that much, as it turns out.
No, you're right. You can't cut it
that much.
Stay away
from the grass, and you should be right.
Yeah, one man will be staying away from the grass, I think, is Steve Bolger after his little escapade with Brendan Ross in the last round, where he put a wheel on the grass, his right rear wheel on the grass, coming down into turn 4 into Lagos and under brakes. The car did not want to stop, and it careened into the back of the Mercedes and really settled their dispute for positions in the latter stages of that race. But You're looking not to make a mistake tonight, and as you just said, Scruffy, you keep your wheels off the grass. The grass is quite a substantial distance away from the track. You can just see from the broadcast shots here, there's plenty of runoff, there's curb, then there's the AstroTurf, and then there's the grass. So you've got plenty of wiggle room. So if you're going to put a wheel on the grass, you're going to have to be really well and truly off track to do so.
Yeah, it's one of those modern circuits with plenty of runoff area that some people love and some people hate, and some people like me are a bit of both. But, you know, it's good for the racing that you can push it and make the mistake and get back on where you went off. But at the same time, if you make a mistake, then you deserve to lose 20 seconds, don't you?
That's exactly right. And the most important thing too, when you go off the track, is to make sure you rejoin it very, very quickly, but very, very close to where you went off. Because if you miss one of those Marshall's posts, as they like to call it, you end up getting put a lap down because it doesn't register that you've actually gone past. So that's the most important thing to remember.
I had an interesting one at Fuji last year when I wound off track on the opposite side of the racing line, and then entire pack coming through, I opted to cut the next corner very slowly and come back on the inside, and that was right before one of the timing beacons. So lucky to get away with that one. It is just about awareness. You've got to check the map and just sort of know where you are and where all those key elements of the track are.
Absolutely right. Well, grid starting to form up. 13 cars. Good to see 13 cars on the grid. A very, very healthy grid. In fact, it might even have 14. I'm just waiting to see if live races will pick this up. We're having a few issues with the live timing at the moment. We've got a good haul of cars. Probably the best turnout we've had for some time in the series on the grid. The pace car gets underway and the warm-up lap begins. So let's check off the order. Brenton Foley, currently third place in the championship, on the pole and in the box seat to pick up the 25 points on offer for tonight. Alongside him, Lamborghini driver of Will Devonish. He's had a good couple of races, but he just hasn't been able to put everything together. His best finish on the season was second last round out at Interlagos, but hasn't really been able to put everything together across multiple races this season. Brennan Ross, probably his best season, the coming of age, I think, for Brennan Ross, we call it. He looks like he's going to be set to move up the ranks into the Pro category instead of being in the Pro-Am after the GT3 is over. He's second in the championship by 4 points. Andy Simpson, we haven't seen him for some time, but this man's always quick, always got something in store. Don't discount this man from being at the pointy end of the field towards the end of the night. Steve Bolger, we said he's been having a good couple of last races as well. 5th place, good strong qualifying session for him. Can he carry over that form from Interlagos into a good race finish tonight? Osrob, the man's mathematically still in the title hunt, but realistically is just looking to secure 4th place. Starting out of P6 in the 555, the BMW. Heath Dixon, he's back. We haven't seen him since the Japanese round in the Bentley, so the second of the 3 Bentley cars in the race. Good qualifying from him. The ARW number, actually I can't remember what his number is, but I should know. I think it's number 9 from memory. Josh Ben filling in for Phil Boak in the second of the PBF Race Engineering Bentleys, the 3rd on the grid. Known for his exploits in the Super 2 at the moment. Lime Mitch running the Audi guest car there, the Audi R8, the number 2. Starting out of P9. Brian Walsh, the lead Playboy Cadillac ATS in 10th place. Back to his teammate Glenn Miles in P11. Rhodey in the Aston Martin St. Gallion guest car, the number 62. And last but not least, not setting qualifying time, we're going to be keeping an eye on this man, Lewis Wedding. Points lead up by 4 points in the McLaren for Loose Sim Sport. And he should make light work of about the first 3 or 4 cars, and he'll get a little bit stiffer after that. Scruff, what do you think? What do you think are we going to see on this start here? Do you think we're going to have a clean race like we did at Interlagos? Do you think we're in for a little bit of chaos? What's your theory?
I think turn 1 could definitely throw something into it for us in terms of a bit of chaos. I think if we get through there nice and cleanly, I think for the most part it should be a fairly clean first lap, but it all comes down to that first corner here.
You're right. It's a fairly wide first corner as well, so there's plenty of room to get out of it and take to the escape roads if you need to. But there's really only one line, pretty much after turn 2 and 3. It's one line through.
The issue with one is you get some people coming in wide, others taking it tight, and then they always meet in the middle.
That's right. Well, here we go. 90 minutes on the clock. It starts counting now. Leader's prerogative to go, and here we go. Or not. No, they're waiting until they get to the bridge. That's where the point of contact must be in the driver's briefing. And they're already starting to get out of line here and look to get a run on each other. And Foley hits the gas. And now we go. The climb up towards turn 1. He got a good launch. Ozrob's going to make it 3 wide down the inside of Andy Simpson here. Looking a bit further back. Brenton Foley's got a clean run. Ozrob on the inside of Simpson. Moves up to... Oh, a little bit of a contact there. Brennan Ross looks like he's lost a little bit of a front aero fairing. Andy Simpson has been rounded up by Ozrob, and a great move out of turn 1. Bolger back to 6th from his 5th place starting. Andy Simpson's not giving it up and fights back on the inside of Ozrob as well and takes back 4th place. So the only switches of position so far, Ozrob up to P5 ahead of Steve Bolger, and Josh Ben actually has moved ahead of Heath Dixon into 7th. So Dixon back to 8th. And like Mitch 9th, and Wedding's already up to 10th. So we suspected he would get through the traffic very, very quickly, and he's already made mincemeat of the first few cars.
It's about as good a run as you can expect, I think, there through turn 1. Minimal contact, bit of the little aero elements taken off of the Mercedes, but for the most part, it shouldn't affect him too badly. You don't really notice when they get knocked off. It's once you take a big hit and the panels are warped, that's when you start to feel the aero changing in these cars.
There you go. Josh Benner moved through on the inside of Steve Bolger at the top of the circuit as well, and he's up to P6 in the 015 Bentley Continental for PBF Race Engineering. So good start for Josh Ben. Lewis Wedding, we're just looking back, he's looking to go down the outside of Lime Mitch round that particular corner there. Didn't quite get close enough to make it. And Lime Mitch is making that Audi very, very wide, taking the defensive lines, which he's entitled to do. It's all fair. And Lewis is going to have to find another way through. They sweep through turns 17 and 18. Lewis just going to bide his time here. And Lime Mitch is wide, and that's the invitation that Wedding needs. Can he get through and get ahead? Yes, he can. Good job. Capitalised on the mistake from Lime Mitch up to P9, and the next target for him is going to be Heath Dixon in the ARW Bentley.
Lewis will be absolutely furious that those couple of corners are followed by a fairly long straight. It doesn't look it when you look at the track map because of the size of the back straight, but it is a long straight, and going up there in that McLaren when you just pass someone, it's got to be just
Lewis had to go very deep because Lime Mitch got a good slipstream out of the final corner and fought back and got down the inside of Wedding. So Wedding went really deep to try and hold the position there, and in actual fact got out on the outside the marbles, lit it up, and then surrendered 9th place back to Lime Mitch. So that battle will continue on. So Lime Mitch is up for a fight here in the Audi. Now Wedding looks down the inside at turn 9. Sorry, not turn 9, that's turn 7 and 8. They climb through here. Now we're going through turn 9 and now down, this is turn 10. Door very firmly shut there by Lime Mitch.
Key for Lewis here is he's got to get the
Here he
position
goes.
early in sectors 1 or 3.
Yep, here he goes. So he's gotten the job done now at the hairpin, but Lime Mitch will try and latch onto the back of that McLaren here. It's so wide, and Wedding knows it. Wedding's trying to break that slipstream straight away. He's gone to the inside of the track, so that's beneficial for Wedding. But he's going to be on the wrong part of the circuit for braking, so he moves back across. He's entitled to do that. That's one move. And he should hold position from here. This is where he can really start to break the shackles. That Audi's trying to clamp onto him and try and get on the back of Dixon. And
Good effort for Lewis staying ahead down the straight there too. That's pretty much that battle won for him.
Yeah, that's race
I'd
awareness.
say.
That's just complete race awareness from Wedding, isn't it? He knew what Lime Mitch did to him down the main straight, and knew that he was too close and needed to break that slipstream immediately. And for some reason, Lime Mitch wasn't 100% awake to that fact and stayed on the racing line, whereas you should have gone with Lewis and probably would have had another chance at getting back at him. Although he's staying very close, and he's gone around. Lime Mitch has gone around and into the wall off at the second to last corner, facing the wrong direction. And that's just a little bit of getting on the loud pedal too early. And is he going to come into the pits, or is he going to stay out? No, he's going to stay out, Lime Mitch. So he's lost a place to Brian Walsh as a result of that, and he did that all on his own. So just trying to stay with Lewis and have another shot down the main straight, and just got a little bit too happy and just lit it up off the second to last corner. So Wedding will have the shackles have now officially been released, and he's free to chase after Heath Dixon.
The issue with the McLaren on its current engine is it's the first sort of, depending on the side of the straight obviously, but it's when it's in the lower gears building up the speed. It just doesn't have the torque going down the straight to hold it just about anyone off. So it must have been a fantastic exit from the hairpin on the previous lap to hold the Audi off down the straight, because it is a much faster car.
Dixon's going defensive here down to the hairpin at turn number 11 as well. So he realises that Wedding is very, very quick and ranging up on the back of him in a matter of minutes. Is he going to make a pass here, Lewis, down into turn number 12? It's a pass being made ahead. Steve Bolger actually down the inside here of Josh Ben at the same corner. It's a good pass by Steve Bolger, and a little bit further back, Wedding down the inside of Heath Dixon as well. And Heath hasn't got anything to fight with there. He's not far enough alongside to be able to get back up alongside Wedding, but Wedding up to P8. Now,
you see that there too, once the McLaren's up to speed, it's got no disadvantage on anyone. It's just getting up to speed that it's struggling with this season, and hopefully we do have that issue sorted for it next season.
Yeah, well, once he gets a rhythm going, Lewis Wedding, he seems to just motor on. Now, while I've got Heath Dixon on screen here with the ARW car, a bit of a plug for the Apex Rewing guys. There is a new season coming to the Apex Rewing YouTube channel in the coming weeks. The DRM season has been publicised on Facebook, and all the drivers in that series getting their liveries all sorted. So the 1970s Porsches, which I'll be in. There will also be a number of guys running the Ford Capri. I don't think anybody's going to pick up the Lancia Delta. There's also, what other cars are there? The BMW Pro Car M1s as well. So quite a good mixture of German 1970s DRMs. And that'll be coming to the broadcast in the next couple of weeks. Also, I'm not going to say too much apart from there is a very special open endurance event coming up, which will be announced in the next few weeks. So for drivers that are interested in endurance racing, stay tuned, because there will be a post on social media coming up in the next couple of weeks as to how you can get involved in that particular race. I'm looking to get a good grid of 20 cars for that event as well. Good pair of two-man teams for an endurance event. So not much more to be said apart from that. So stay tuned to the Apex Rewing Facebook page and the YouTube channel, and there will be a bunch of info coming your way shortly.
That was a fantastic plug, Nether, and now I'm going to have to try and outdo you later on in the broadcast.
I'm sure you'll have something coming up sooner or later. Steve Bolger still hasn't let go of the back of Josh Ben. Josh Ben's gotten back past him. So that's a good little battle there between the Lamborghini driver and the Bentley driver. Little lock up there from the PBF Pro and PBF engineering car of Josh Ben. Ahead of them, Rob. Brendan Ross has just settled into a bit of a rhythm, and he's just trying to do his best to stay with Andy Simpson here. The leading two have buggered off. Simpson and Ross both taking a bit of advantage of the track limits there at turn number 19.
They can be quite strict with the track cuts when you run wide here too. Neither driver getting reported for it on that occasion, but that is one thing to have a look at too, is corners like the hairpin onto the back straight. If you run wide there, almost every time you'll get a track cut, same as the last corner on the exit.
Just watching this battle here between Ben and Bolger, and Dixon's been dropped by Wedding quite quickly, and he's really gotten his skates on and about to latch onto the back of the Lamborghini of Bolger in the next 2 or 3 minutes, I would say. Apologies just for the broadcast camera that has a bit of a cutting issue when we get through the S's. There's a camera on the other side of the circuit that tries to pick up the action all but temporarily and then cuts back to the other camera. So that's why it just goes black for a split second on the broadcast screen. It happens in the game for us as well. Oh, Steve Bolger very, very wide at the hairpin turn there, and that was no invitation needed for Lewis Wedding. He got alongside, but Bolger got the better run off the turn. And now this is Wedding's opportunity to get down the inside of Steve Bolger at turn 12 if he's close enough to make a move stick. Sizing him up, or is he going to take it, or is he going to wait? Late move, here he goes, down the inside. Nice clean pass. Beautiful job from Lewis Wedding. Sold that perfectly.
Yeah, Bolger not an easy one to pass either. He's it's a conflicting sentence, but he's very aggressively defensive when you're racing him. So it was a good move there, Lewis, to get that done nice and early.
And Lewis has raced against these guys for long enough as well to know what the kind of habits are that some of these drivers have as well. So he'll know that if people are prone to making late-minute moves and where he can and can't pass somebody. He'll know all of that in his head and be able to work out, okay, I can make this particular move stick or not make this particular move stick. Getting a bit close to the back of Josh Ben there. This will be one man who he hasn't had much experience racing against, so he'll probably want to size him up for maybe a lap or two or maybe a half a lap or so just to figure out where his strengths and weaknesses are and where he can actually make this pass work. Won't be into turn 1 this time around, although Josh Ben being running the pace that he's running, it's allowed Steve Bolger to stay in touch with Lewis Wedding. Otherwise, Wedding would probably be romping off into the distance now. And you can see going through the foreground shot there, Brennan Ross still with Andy Simpson. Foley and Devonish have been not been separated by more than about 1.5 seconds for the majority of the opening stint of this race so far. We haven't put them on the broadcast very much. At the moment, they're only separated by 1.4 seconds. Good to see that that's still a relatively tight battle out in front, and I think they're probably just going into a race management mode at the moment with that gap separating the two of them. Just looking here, it looks like Osrob may be just slowly starting to come back to this group of cars on screen here, Ben Wedding and Bolger. He's been having a bit of a lonely race, and Heath Dixon hasn't got the pace at the moment to live with these guys at the front. He's been dropping back at the rate of about, last lap around, it was about 1.5 seconds slower than these guys. Wedding down in the inside of turn number 12, not close enough to get the job done, and Ben, despite the fact that he didn't have the apex for that corner, had enough of pace and momentum to maintain his distance to Wedding. Now defensive tactics start to come in. Little lock up again from Josh Ben. He's done it twice there now. Bolger's not close enough to capitalise on any wide lines being taken by Wedding. There's only one line traditionally through this part of the circuit here. Next passing opportunities at turns 19 and 20, if he can get it done. Not close enough this time around. Devonish, quickest lap of the race, takes over Foley's quick lap by literally hundredths of a second. So Foley's quickest lap time was a 2:02.994 that time around, immediately surpassed, a bit earlier on, immediately now surpassed by Devonish with a 2:02.941. So nothing in it between the two at the front. Wedding goes again now. Decisive move at turn 1, and Bolger goes with him. Great opportunistic move from Steve Bolger with the door wide open, or left wide open by Josh Ben. So in one corner he loses 2 places. And that's opportunistic from both Wedding and Bolger there, Scruff.
Yeah, perfect there for Lewis too, because the McLaren should be one of, if not the fastest car through this first sector as well. Handles like an absolute dream, that car. So well-timed move for him, and if he can get the run right, he should be able to break away from these guys enough to be safe down the straight.
Yeah, he's starting
and
to...
I've just got word through too in my incredibly uncomfortable headphone that it's a comfortable 2-stop race.
If it's a comfortable 2-stop race, we'll be expecting everybody to sort of be in around that 1 hour to go mark, and obviously the 30-minute to go mark if you want to break it up into equal thirds of this race. But we have seen ability to go a bit longer.
say they get about 35 minutes from a tank if they're pushing.
Well, it'll be
Going
interesting.
on that wording.
It'll be interesting to see what Lewis Wedding does too, because he's had to fight to get through the field as well. He's going to have a mixture of, driving where he's had to sort of manage the throttle, so be able to conserve a bit of fuel behind some of the cars, but also a bit of driving where he'll be running at full throttle as well. So we know he can save a bit of fuel, and has been able to go a bit longer than some of these drivers in the past. So he is the master of strategy. He'll be working out in his head right now where he's going to be coming in and what his next tactics are going to be. Foley takes back the fastest lap of the race.
With all the lifting off he would have had to do behind people, as well as being in the slipstream, I don't think he'd be any worse off than he would be had he done qualifying and been where he expected.
No, absolutely right. And now he's released, he sets his quickest lap as well, 2:03.3 that time around, and you can see he actually has broken away quite quickly from Bolger and Ben. And Ben having a look around the outside of turn one. Steve Bolger's awake to that, plants his car on the apex and holds position for the moment. Let's go back and have a look at the leading pair. Here they are. They're actually catching up to the back of Glenn Miles, so I think must have made a stop at some point because his last lap around was a 2:17 and his sector was a 1:20. So I think he's probably come into the pits maybe for some damage or something sight unseen, but there he is, just ahead of these guys.
It wasn't a drive-through for track cuts, was it?
No, it would have flashed. It would have flashed up on our screen. A sector 1 time of a 1:20 tends to suggest that you've come into the pits and had to stop. But this leading pair have kicked along, and it says on there.
I don't actually get the messages up when I'm racing on the screen that says if someone set a fastest lap or if I've got a penalty or anything.
Yeah,
but I was behind Glenn early on in that race at Abu Dhabi as I started from the pits. And I think after about a half a lap of being anywhere near him, I said, he's going to get a lot of drive-throughs. Within about half an hour, I think he'd had 5.
Yep. Lights on for Brenton Foley now as well, just making Glenn Miles aware that, hey, I'm the race leader, I'm coming through. And he stays wide there through turn 18 and gets out of the way very, very nicely, lets them both through. So both unimpeded. So just on a second separating these two at the moment. So it's different strengths and weaknesses. We have a look at the sector times. Devonish seems to be a little bit better in Sector 1. Sector 2 this time around, he was a bit quicker as well. So he's chomped into this particular, into the advantage this time around. Traditionally, obviously, the Bentley has a little bit better, it was a bit better through the first sector of the lap. Devonish got a little bit more straight line speed. And then they're fairly evenly matched through the third sector. So nothing in it between these two at the moment. We go back.
The Bentley, despite looking big and ungainly and heavy and horrible through corners, it really does like high-speed corners quite a bit, and it's got a lot of punch out of the lower-speed corners.
Well, you just got to see here, he's extended the gap up to 1.5 seconds now from the start-finish line. The last time around, it was only just on 1 second, so he's found half a second.
There from Foley.
Yep, Foley, Larry, as usual. That's the way he likes to drive. And this is where we start to see Devonish hopefully start to haul in the Bentley through this part of the lap where the straight line speed and a little bit of the slipstream comes into effect. It's a gap at 1.5. It's definitely getting a little bit shorter than that now, down to about, I'd say, 1.2, 1.3. So Lambo has a bit of mumbo in a straight line. And a bit further back, here we go. So Brendan Rossen just challenging Andy Simpson down here. We just saw it out of the back of shot as we were watching the leading pair. Is Brendan Ross going to get down the inside of Andy Simpson? He is. He has the apex, but Simpson has the line for the next corner, which is turn number 13 and 14. And they'll go side by side through these corners. If Roski can stay there, he'll have the inside for the next couple of corners at 15 and 16. And did quite nicely there. Good exchange.
Sounds like Miles may have had a spin as these two were coming up to lap him, so that may have balked Andy a little bit and given Ross the run.
Potentially. He was still fairly close. He was keeping tabs on him throughout the whole entire bit of this race so far. And Ozrob has been dispatched by Lewis Wedding as well. So Wedding already up to 5th place. Rossi running deep at the final corner, having to get going very, very quickly, kicking up a little bit of smoke from those tyres. Andy Simpson probably a bit too far back to have a dive here at turn 1, so you'll stay wide and try and get the run down the hill. Wedding that time around 2:04, so having the lap traffic to get, or the lap traffic and the car of Osrob to get past is the reason for his slower lap time. But what's he got in store? What are these two been doing? These two have been, that last time around, I think you might be right about the lap traffic scruff, because their lap times were 2:06.4 and 2:07.4 for these two, whereas they've been consistently in the high 2:03s for most of this race. And
I've got the FCR in one of my ears, so pretty much everything that happens I'm being told about. But yeah, it sounds like Glenn, about the same place as Mitch did in the warm-up, I think it was, just on the way down to that hairpin, just balked them enough on the corner that they had to lift out of it. And Simpson was in front at the time, so you think that would have given Ross a bit of an advantage in terms of having longer to spot it.
And then a bit of an opportunistic run there, I guess. Here's Simpson, now goes down the inside at turn number 12. Not quite close enough, but Rossi gives him the space. And this is what happened all over again on the previous lap, although this time Andy Simpson backs out of it. Not game enough to go around the outside and try and get up the inside of Brendan Ross, although he was looking at straight lining there and having a bit of a run at him towards turn 15, 16.
A good spot for a block pass through there. You've got to get it perfect or you run off and get a track cut.
Yeah, very, very easy to take a track cut through those tight corners, those corners. Oh, Lewis Wedding's had a moment too. He's gone across the grass. What did he do there? He had a little bit of a tank slapper on, I think, just through that particular part of the circuit, and just had to correct it. So let's have a look and see from this particular angle if we can see it.
Looks like he might be losing the spot into turn 1 if he doesn't defend early. Rob to the inside.
Big four-wheel slide, and did a great job to catch it, and that allowed Osrob to get back up the inside of him as well. So, and very, very close.
On the apex
yeah, and we're watching the replay too, and Wedding was very, very decisive in taking back that position very, very quickly as well. So,
yeah, Rob got up the inside into turn 1. Lewis, not thinking he had enough car there, they go through and it spun Rob around a little bit, so that's a spot for Lewis. I'd say that one's more a racing incident than anything.
I think Rob's having a little bit of an issue here because Josh Ben's gotten past him as well since we were last looking at the replay of Lewis.
He was pointing the wrong way out of turn 1 after contact between him and Lewis.
There you go, and that's also put Steve Bolger onto the back of Osrob here as well. He's going to take a look down the inside at the hairpin at turn 11, I would imagine, Steve Bolger, and yes he is, and is he close enough? He would have been close enough if you wanted to make the dive, but decided not to. Stays on the racing part of the track. Rob takes all the apex and the AstroTurf, and now Bolger chases him across the track, getting the slipstream. The Lamborghini very quick in a straight line. Andy Simpson there going back through on Brendan Ross for third place. Osrob with the defensive line into turn 12. Secures the apex and stays ahead for the time being. Let's go back to
Devonish is right on the back of Foley now too, just under 4 tenths between them at the last timings point.
Yeah, Foley's having a little bit of a moment there. He had a little bit of a wiggle there on the front end at turn number 19. So I'm wondering whether Foley, with that driving style that he tends to employ, the Larry driving style as we refer to it, is starting to take an effect on his tyres, because Devonish is starting to get become a bit of a pain in the backside, and you can see they've got the entire front straight between themselves and third place man Andy Simpson and fourth place man Brendan Ross at the moment as well. So they've got an absolute eternity in terms of time up their sleeve only through the first 24 minutes of this race. So these two have, despite the fact that they've been setting great pace out in front and having a nice clean exchange between them, they're literally making this a 2-horse race at the moment, so making it very difficult for Lewis Wedding to get up onto the back of them and challenge for some points.
At this stage, though, I think Lewis's priority will be Ross, as they are, I think it was 4 points between them and the championship, whereas Foley was a further 19 back on Lewis.
Yeah, correct.
So he will prioritise just getting in front of Ross and doing what he can after that point, but
So just plugging into our little calculator just to show you the point standings as they happen at the moment, with Brenton Foley out in front, Brennan Ross currently 4th, Lewis Wedding currently 5th. It then moves the championship point situation into very, very interesting territory. It'd be Wedding over Ross by 2 points, and then Foley a further 3 points back. So 5 points would cover the top 3 if they finish where they are currently. So, as you said, his priority, you're right, is Brennan Ross, Scruff, because that's the man who is ahead of in the championship and would set to lose a couple of points of that advantage if he's to finish behind him as it stands right now.
Yeah, the Mercedes, very good car on the straights and through a lot of corners, and we did put a lot of time and effort into trying to pick the right car for the season, and it worked really well for the first 6 races. But this sort of, like, the last half of the championship really has been where it started to go to tracks that don't suit it quite as well. It's not good it's not a manoeuvrable car.
Yeah. Well, you've got to
drive on the absolute limit through slow corners to get it to turn. I'll slide it through every slow corner.
And you've got to remember too, Scruff, that with the Mercedes and all the cars in general, they each had all their strengths and weaknesses. So some cars were going to be favoured to some circuits and others to different circuits. And that's why we've had a good spread of race winners, podium finishes, and different mixed up race results across the season so far, is because different cars have come to play on different circuits. So we didn't see a win for a Bentley until we got to round 6, but we had seen wins for the McLaren and the Mercedes over the course of the first the first 5 rounds of the season. So a little bit different. And also the Lamborghinis have had some good pace. Sometimes they haven't been able to get it put together. The drivers have taken a bit of time for them to gel with the car, and in the likes of Steve Bolger, he's only sort of really come to play in the last couple of weeks with his car, whereas Will Devonish has always been quick but hasn't had luck on his side. He's had a few disconnections over the time, had a couple of issues with the car, and it's finally managed to get it going in his favour, albeit a bit too late. Wedding in the background there, slowly starting to close in on this pair. Last time around, Simpson 2:04.5, Ross was a 2:03.9, and Wedding was a 2:04 dead. So starting to chip into this advantage very, very slowly is Wedding, and he's only 4 seconds off the battle.
Taken about a second off over the last 2 or 3 laps, I think it was. So he's just moved into that stage where he's not being challenged by anyone. His nearest rival's next car up the road, so he doesn't need to push right now, and he'll just be trying, I think, to extend this first stint as long as he can take it.
Yeah, that's the thing we're going to be watching out for, is to see how far he can actually make that car go with the amount of work he's had to do with passing traffic. We come back to the leading pair, and Foley having a moment through turn 1. Just a car wanted to swap ends on him, and he put the power down. Rear end started to light up, so he had to get off the power. Devonish is staying with him for the moment. Now, the real question is going to be out of these two is, what's the strategy that they're going to employ? Who's going to come in first? Is there going to be an undercut potentially affected by Will Devonish, or is Foley going to be the one that dictates when all the stops start to happen? Foley's got the fastest lap at the moment. These two have been pretty much matching each other's pace in terms of outright lap pace, just they have the different strengths and weaknesses through the different sectors of the track, although that time Foley was only a 10th quicker than Devonish through sector 1, but mind you, he did have that moment out of turn number 1. Down to turn 12 they come. Look at the distance they've got. You can see the 3rd and 4th place cars just off in the distance negotiating the hairpin, and also Lewis Wedding as well. So they've physically got just about the length of the back straight. So the distance between turns 11 and 12 is their margin. Foley's really starting to put the power down a bit early out of some of these corners. You can see he's gassing it up, the smoke coming off the tyres. They're not going to like that in the long run with the amount of drive off some of these corners, whereas Will's just got it under control at the moment. He's not driving too aggressively. He's just following in Foley's wheel tracks. managing the power delivery to the rear wheels, although he did have a little wiggle there.
We've had a spin, I believe, from Rhodey just as the third and fourth place drivers go through.
You're certainly right. There he is in the Aston Martin Singalian. So he's had a bit of a moment down there. It looks like at turn 16. And yeah, there he is on the replay. Just got out on the curb and just carried a bit too much speed through the curb there. So.
And Ross taking an early pit stop here.
And Rhodey did the right thing too by staying out of the way of everybody. And yeah, right, Brendan Ross is in. So very, very early for Brendan Ross. So coming in literally almost on the half an hour mark exactly. So that's out of the battle for third place. So that'll give Andy Simpson a little bit of breathing room. He's the only man to come in for a stop.
There's an outside chance that there was a little bit of team orders going on there. I can't be sure.
You can't be sure.
He may have been told that it might be an idea to stop early.
Well, it's not a bad idea if to break it up into thirds. So
I don't know if Lewis is listening to this, so I don't want to say what I'm doing, but he already knows.
Well, I don't think it matters what Lewis listens to or doesn't listen to, Scruff, because we've seen before time and time again, and I'm going to look forward to this when we come to Road America in a couple of weeks' time, is he does tend to be the master of strategy. The last time we did GT3 at Road America, he showed us all up by going into a good strategy situation and not taking any tyres. Now the battle for the lead is on like Donkey Kong here, because Devonish has found a way to get past Foley, and they went side by side through the arena section part of the circuit, although Foley's up the inside here at 16, but now Devonish has the correct side of the circuit for 17 and 18, side by side through turn 17 and 18. You've got to have a willing participant to be able to do that. Foley has
come out ahead soon,
and Foley's come out ahead. So Devonish tries, he might, and Foley decides, I've had enough. I'm going into the pits here, and releases Devonish for another lap. And now,
been listening to my scheming. That's what he's been doing.
I actually think this might be smart from Foley here, because they're approaching Glen Miles, which means that Devonish is going to have to negotiate Miles on this particular lap if he's close. In actual fact, Miles is just ahead, and it looks like he's had a. Looks like he was about to go round there as well, but he didn't. So I thought
Wedding's caught up to Simpson a lot in the last lap or so too. He's now got that gap down under just about under 2 seconds, 2.1 seconds between them. As Simpson, sorry, that was Foley as he was between the two of them. I thought Simpson
Foley
vanished.
No, Foley's dropping down the order there. I think that we might see Devonish
good
in this.
slide through turn one for Lewis. Sorry, that always needs to be pointed out.
Yeah, Lewis and his sensational slides is not the same sort of thing that we see from Ben
Heath
Foley.
just missed the pit entry. He was in the lane and just too much speed and had to abort and go back onto track. Which may actually have been a track cut for him.
And I think you're probably right there, actually, Scruff. Let's have a look.
He locked up on the entry and just had to go straight.
So not good news for Heath Dixon. So he's going to have to go another lap. Hopefully he's got some fuel to go that other lap. We know that fuel predictions and fuel delivery is tends to be a bit of a weakness for the ARW driver. We've seen this before. We've seen it at Barcelona. We've seen it several times in ARW competition. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's going to have to baby it around on this particular lap and get going. In fact, where is he? He seems to be going at a reasonable clip. Yellow flag, local yellow flag. Oh, that's for Rhodey again. He's around at the top of the hill at turn 9, facing the wrong direction as Heath Dixon came through. So that's what yellow flag was for. Staying green though, full circuit green. It's just a local yellow up there at turn number 9.
You were saying as Foley pitted that it may have been to get away from the lap traffic they'll catch up to, and that is definitely something the drivers do think about as well. Last season when
Devonish nearly did what Heath Dixon did. Sorry to cut you off there, Scruff. He had it all locked up on the entrance to the pit lane just before the turn-in point, just before the left-hand bend. So very nearly did the same thing. And you're right, Glen Miles is now being lapped by Andy Simpson. Wedding in as well. So Wedding mimicking what Devonish is doing. And that will surrender the lead of the race to Andy Simpson, with Devonish having come into the pits. So how far can Andy Simpson take this Ferrari? Glen Miles is missing a bonnet there as well, so I'm wondering if he's actually he must have hit a wall somewhere, Glen Miles.
Yeah, going back to what I was saying, last season with the LMP2s, I would regularly pit 5 minutes early as I saw them coming up behind just to get out of them. You're not losing lap time by being lapped by the fastest car, or the reverse works here where you're not losing lap time if you catch a lapped car at the wrong point on the track. So it is definitely something the drivers do think about, as well as for Foley, he would have been trying to get on a fresher set of tyres.
Yeah, Foley's
That
coming
will
across the
try and
line.
break away a bit.
Speaking of Foley, he's coming across the line now just as Devonish is exiting the pit. So in actual fact, that's worked out nicely for Foley. He's got, we had a bit of a moment there just at turn one, just got it all wrong. So he's actually increased his advantage over Devonish by a little bit with coming in for the early stop. And Heath Dixon has made it into the pits. So that's a nice little advantage there for Brenton Foley. Probably will get the first timing intermediate as they come across the line now. 2.3 seconds his advantage. Was when he came into the pits, they were literally side by side. So slightly slower stop. Lime Mitch, the drive-through penalty. So he's currently occupying the, where is he on the timing screens? He's occupying the 10th place position, and he's currently out on the circuit. So that will be for a track violation. That won't be a pit lane infringement, it'll be a track violation infringement. First of the penalties that's been applied today.
The early stop strategy looks to have worked for Ross as well. He's taken 2 seconds off Devonish, and the gap to Simpson looks like when Simpson does pit,
Which
Ross
is now.
should have a couple seconds. Oh, there we go.
Yep, so as you called it.
The gap to Wedding has gone back out to over 5 seconds from Ross, so that's a good 1.5, 2 seconds he's gained there.
Yep, now you're right. He has extended his advantage as Brendan Ross over Lewis Wedding by virtue of that earlier stop. Only a lap or so difference in the tyre life, but the tank of fuel is where most of the time goes in the GT3 competition when it comes to pit stops. Now Brendan Ross is coming up to Rhodey. We had it all locked up on the rear brakes there and beautifully controlled it through 15 and 16. Now Rhodey will get the blue flags and he'll have to get out of the way. Just going to be mindful here, yep, and does the right thing, does the same thing Glenn Miles did, gets off the racing line between 18 and 19. Now, where's Andy Simpson in this? Stationary in the lane as Brendan Ross is rounding the final corner and Simpson's still in the lane. This is going to be a huge gain for Brendan Ross. Massive gain. In actual fact, I reckon Lewis Wedding's going to get past here as well, and quite comfortably. So, I'm not sure what's happened to Andy Simpson, a long stop or some trouble there, maybe some damage repair. I'm suspecting that the only way that he can be behind Lewis Wedding is via a damage repair situation. The pit stop's normally around a minute 31 for a first sector time, so we'll just wait to see what happens with Andy Simpson when he comes through the first sector this time around, because that'll be the telltale sign on our screens as to what exactly went on.
One thing as well with Simpson, as I said earlier, he does drive at 110% the entire race. So you see him sliding around a lot, and the tyres could have just been absolutely destroyed, and he may have been struggling or had a spin towards the end of his first stint. So there's a few things in there. It may have just been completely down to tyre drop-off. It may have made a mistake, may have left a bit of damage he didn't need fixed onto repair, or so many things that can be with sim racing. You never know till the end.
His first sector times come up as a minute 43 compared to a lot of the other drivers that were doing minute 36s. So I got a funny feeling maybe he was the other party that might have been involved in that bit of damage that saw Brendan Ross lose a front aero fairing or a front dive plane on the opening corner of the opening lap of the race. So definitely damage repair, and that's one thing that a few drivers fail to recognise, is that some of these damages on the cars are superficial. They don't really have much of an impact on the performance of the car, yet you need to tell your pit crew to to disregard any damage and just change your tyres and put petrol in. Otherwise, they're going to spend unnecessary time repairing damage, and the only damage you need to replace is where you've lost a rear wing or a front splitter or something like that. You don't need to do anything else, or if you've got need to repair steering damage. But that's definitely a damage repair situation. In actual fact, it's put Steve Bolger right under the rear wing of that Ferrari 488 for what is now 5th and 6th place. As Rhodey's having an issue, so just back here, sorry to cut you off there, he's had a bit of an unusual moment there at the final corner. I just noticed that something was going on. I'm not sure if did he miss the pit entrance or something happened here. No, he went very, very wide at the final corner, and yeah, he tried to pit and carried way too much speed. He did what Heath Dixon did and went straight on. So the second person to do that
had about half the amount of fuel he needed left because he was slowing down the whole way down the straight, so it indicates that he just gave up and
and in actual fact
looking for the exit button.
Yeah, in actual fact he's retired from the race, having missed the pit entry as well, so no good there. Lewis Wedding in 4th place has actually set purple sector 1, 31.5, so a 10th and a half faster than the fastest lap of the race, as I can hear my daughter banging on the door trying to get into the commentary box here.
Bit of a multi-guest commentator around her.
Yeah, although she hasn't got very much to say apart from Well,
I mean, what do we say, really?
That's it. Oh, got a Lion Mitch, a second penalty as well, and was that him, I think, in the background behind Lewis Wedding, I believe. Yes, that was Brian Walsh. Actually, in fact,
Devonish has closed the gap to Foley by about half. It's down to 1.3 seconds now.
Yeah, the timing screen.
Cross line 1.2.
I just saw the Wedding pop up to 3rd place for a second there, but I think that had something to do just with the timing, just getting itself in order. Wedding's middle sector was a 50.6. Fastest middle sector was seen Devonish in the low 50s. So what's Wedding got for this time? He's getting probably a little bit of benefit from the slipstream from Brennan Ross, and Wedding does a 2:02.9. So that's comparable to what Devonish's times were earlier on in the race. So it's slowly starting to come to him, although the quickest lap time is still Foley with a 2:02.569. Devonish's best is a 2:02.635, and next is Wedding with a 2:02.933, which was that time around. As he chases after Brennan Ross through the S's, that gap at the front is starting to shrink. Foley's margin is now only about 1.3 seconds. So Devonish again, just by some nice clean driving, slowly starting to erode that gap again. Devonish, as we said before, he's had plenty of seat time in this car, has had plenty of good races, but just hasn't been able to put the whole race together. And his best finish was the last time out, 2nd place at Interlagos, which Wedding ran.
Foley makes a mistake there now. Devonish right onto the back of
it. Yeah, 3.5 tenths is the gap now. Oh, Foley really shuts the door firmly there at turn 15 and 16. No opportunity for a block pass there this time around. And this is the heat of the battle. This is where it's at right now. Looking at the standings, Brenton Foley first, Devonish second, Brennan Ross is 3rd overall at the moment, Wedding 4th. So if it was to finish this way, Wedding would lead Ross by a point, and then a further 6 points back from Ross to Brenton Foley. So again,
so we've had Lion Mitch DNF as well.
And Lion Mitch, I would imagine that's probably got to do with some of the penalties that he's had for some track violations.
I imagine he's decided that whatever's on television's a bit better for him for tonight.
Well, there's probably not much on television tonight until we get to the Canadian Grand Prix, which is going to be in the early hours of Monday morning. And then next week, the Le Mans 24-hour in real life as well. We were very careful when rescheduling the dates for this race and for the final round not to conflict with that particular event, because pretty much all these guys who will be racing tonight, I think, will rather be glued to their monitors rather than be racing. Now, Devonish has managed to stay with Foley through Sector 1 here. Just lost a few car lengths off that last couple of corners. Can he get a good exit out of turn number 11 here? Interesting to see just from that camera shot there, the different lines that the drivers want to take. Foley tends to carry a bit more speed and try and use a bit more of the exit curb to gather up his pace for the run down the straight, whereas Devonish tries to square the corner off a little bit more and sort of angle and get on the power as early as he possibly can. And it plays to his advantage because look at the gap, look at the deficit that he's been able to close it down to visually. Very, very close. And that particular run from the top of the circuit down to turn 12. He's just not close enough to capitalise. And so look at the different lines through here too. Foley with the wider approach through turn 15, 16. Devonish with the shallower line through 15, trying to straighten that particular turn 15 as much as he possibly can. Also again here, staying a lot closer to the apex through 18 or 17 and 18. So contrasting driving styles for different drivers and the cars that they drive all adds up in the end.
A lot of that is down to the car as well. The Mercedes, generally you want to square off the corners and try and launch out there, as Devonish sets his best time of the race.
Yeah, 2:02.625, so shaves a fraction off his PB and continues to chase Foley and staying right with him. Now I'm going to go back to the battle for third and fourth here, because this is on as well, and Rossi's just made a mistake at the final corner, and it's a gift to Lewis Wedding at the final corner.
Absolutely hurls abuse at his brakes in my right ear.
Oh, you've got him, you're listening in there, I can imagine as well.
I've got them there.
Let's see if we can see what happened here. I think you're right, Scruffy. Just a little bit of a lock-up, just under pressure. Wedding had a look and kind of coaxed him into it there. And, sailing wide Brennan Ross. So, unfortunately
Not
for him...
often that he's unbroadcastable, but he was unbroadcastable then.
Yes, it certainly was. He's not going to give up hope. He's going to do his best to stay with Wedding here. Now, his best opportunity, I think, is just to stay with Wedding as long as he can, and then he's going to have to think about what strategy he wants to employ here to try and get back past the McLaren driver. Let's go back to the leading pair and see how they're doing. So not much has changed in the last little exchange. Steve Bolger and the other Lamborghinis moved up to 5th. Osrob 6th. Andy Simpson has come out and he's all the way down 7th. Josh Ben 8th overall, Heath Dixon 9th, and he's the last of the runners on the lead lap. Brian Walsh a lap down, Glenn Miles 3 laps down, Lime Mitch and Rody the other 2 DNFs. I mean, it says there Glenn Miles is in 12th place, but eventually he will come up into 11th once he passes the required amount of laps required to beat Lime Mitch, which he's only got to do one more after this, and then he will be outright in 12th. But we're past the half distance mark now, and in about 15 minutes or so we're going to probably look towards the next set of stops as Foley lowers the fastest lap benchmark again to a 2:02.231, and Devonish that time around was 2:02.9, so losing a little bit of time in that particular occasion. So Foley stepping up the pace as the fuel load comes off and as he gets more and more comfortable with that Bentley, and just a little trim of the brake bias here or there, and a little bit more confidence in a corner here or a corner there, and not driving that Larry style early on at the moment here. Now that he's got some new tyres underneath him, the smoke tend to come off the tyres when they were a little bit used towards the end of the stint.
Definitely not been a good race for Andy Simpson since the first round of pit stops.
No, he's gone backwards.
7th at the moment, and he came out in 5th, I believe.
And he's just rounding up Brian Walsh at the moment.
Got a track cut on the previous lap, so we can't check the lap times there either. But
actually, where did he have that lap cut? He had it in the second sector actually. So it's an unusual spot to have it.
Couple easies. Now going onto the back straight out of that hairpin, you can get an easy one on the exit, and I think after the corner at the end of the straight, there's an easy one on the exit there too.
Oh, we had a little bit of opposite lock there through the sweepers as well, through the S's. Just see the car.
That's just how he drives.
It is how he drives sometimes. I often wonder with how the cars tend to, on our broadcast, they look like they're taking quite a lot of curb through some of these corners, and you're right, there are probably going to be a few track violations coming up as a result of that. But yeah, I'm a bit surprised, as you, Scruff, that Andy Simpson's gone backwards since the first round of stops as much as he has. His best lap, 2:03.1, but but then just looking at his sector times, where the race leaders are doing mid-31s for an opening sector time, Simpson's doing 32s, like doing low 32s. So he really hasn't had a good second stint since he's come out of the pits, and he really needs probably a safety car to get back up onto the back of the guys and really get himself in a position to threaten what was looking to be a good solid result for his return to GT3 racing. When we went green about 50 minutes ago, Glenn Miles has gone around, but thankfully out of harm's way. Just saw that in the back of shot just as we were watching Andy Simpson. That being said, Simpson's only off 4 seconds off the back of Ozrob for what's P6. Ozrob doing similar lap times though to Simpson.
Did come out of the pits with Bolger right behind him, and now there's 11 seconds between Simpson and Bolger, so it's obviously had a fair drama somewhere as I go, and he did a 2:04.2 on that lap, so 1.1 off his PB. And
if you look to Ozrob, did a 2:05.0 that time around as well, so he took a bit of time out of him that time, did Andy Simpson, but he's just not doing it consistently enough. Josh Ben's got nothing for him at the moment behind him in the PBF Bentley. Let's go back and have a look at the race leaders and see what they're... Oh, she was just cycling through. No, that was all right. I thought I saw someone off the road for a minute. Foley and Devonish still locked together as like they're tethered on a chain gang. These two have not been able to be separated by much more than about a second and a half all race long.
Been a much more measured drive from Devonish than we normally see as well. Normally is, as soon as the car's in front of him, he's trying to get up the inside. It does look to be just driving a little bit more conservatively here, which is what you want to see in an endurance championship.
Little lock up from Foley into the final corner. And you're right, Scruff. All about pacing yourself in these particular events. You know, you've got to work out when is the right time to make the move that you need to make. As Devonish sizes up Foley here at turn number 1, and here he goes down the inside, and that's a very, very decisive move. Came from a nice little distance back, and a great move and job done for the Lamborghini driver. Let's have a look at that on the replay, because that was a sensational pass. Bumper cam. So much later on the brakes too. Made the corner very, very easily.
I've driven that Bentley before, and the one point I thought it was a bit weak was going into hairpins. So definitely has figured out the weak point for the Bentley as Devonish and taken advantage of it there.
He certainly has. And the next question will be, can Devonish drive away from Foley, and what sort of pace has he got over the next sort of 10 minutes or so, because we will be looking at pit stops probably in the next 10 or 15 depending on how these drivers have been conserving their fuel. So has Devonish just been sitting behind Foley and looking after the tyres and looking after his fuel load, and can he go that little bit longer, or is he going to pull the trigger and dictate the next round of stops? Or is he going to go a little bit longer when Foley comes in, or is he going to drive away from him at the front? All valid scenarios. I would say that probably Devonish might have to try and drive away a little bit here, because we saw what happened when Foley came in ahead of him and effectively took, I wouldn't say it's the undercut, because they were side by side coming into the pits virtually. Foley peeled off and then ended up with a 2.3 second margin after the first round of pit stops. I dare say that Will's probably going to have a bit of an advantage up his sleeve when he comes into the pits the next time around. Actually just noticed on the back of the rear wing of that Lamborghini as well, the JP Simshed logo for Will Devonish. So himself and Ozrob have been teaming up with JP Curio, who's been doing some running in the AMS Oz Super 2 season, and they've been teaming up and doing some work in the iRacing and some endurance format as well. So plenty of seat time, not only in AMS Oz for Will Devonish, but also in iRacing as well. So I'm wondering if that's tended to give him a bit of extra racecraft in the last couple of rounds, because his last 2 rounds have been great. His best 2 results: 4th place Abu Dhabi, 2nd place at Interlagos, and right now up the front, leading with Brenton Foley. Although might not be leading for very long here, because Foley's looking down the inside at turn number 11. Will gives him the space, and that's a nice easy pass for the PBF driver in Brenton Foley, but he's giving a nice toe here to Devonish, and Devonish will look down the inside at turn 12 and look to immediately wrestle the lead back, and the timing screen shows that he's just fractionally ahead, and he's got the racing line here into turn 12, although a little bit wide.
Not getting it there for the exit.
No, he couldn't pick up the power early enough, could he?
Foley around the outside there once again, I think it was Foley and Devonish doing that before.
Yep.
And Foley managed to get the spot then around the outside too, so some good driving here from both of them.
Yeah, very good drive from both of them. Devonish, just because he was on the AstroTurf on the outside when he carried so much speed into turn 12, he just couldn't pick up the throttle as early as he wanted to try and stay ahead before they got to turn 13. Foley just swooped around the outside and solidified the lead of the race again. But no, these two have been having some very clean exchanges in the last couple of laps. Very, very good to see. Foley just a little bit of a wiggle out of the final corner as well. And they've got so much margin on Lewis Wedding, though, it's not funny. They can afford to squabble a little bit as long as they don't turn each other around. Brendan Ross. Oh, they're coming together. A little bit of a side-to-side contact there. Devonish had a look at the inside. He actually takes the place. Now, I'm wondering, is he going to surrender that back to Foley, or is that going to be deemed a pass? No, he's going to give the place back. So it's probably a smart move rather than face a penalty later. Let's see if we can pick up what happened here again, because that was a very, very late move from Devonish. Looked pretty fair. He was alongside. Oh, and Foley turned in on him. I think they're a little bit further away from the apex than normal, but Will's probably done the right thing and said, you know what, rather than face a penalty a bit later on, I'd rather just give the place back, and I'll worry about having another opportunity a bit later on down the track. I personally didn't see anything wrong with that scruff. I thought that was pretty fair. There was plenty of room there at turn 1, but Will's just probably elected just to be rather safe than sorry with giving the position back to Foley.
Yeah, it was such a big gap behind him. There's not really any risk in just playing it safe and giving their position back. You need more angles than I've seen it from before you can really make a call, but sort of looked like Will was running a little bit wide and Foley turned in a little bit, so I'd say it was more of a racing incident from the TV cameras.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We've lost Glenn Miles as well in the last couple of laps, so he is the 3rd retirement of this race. It's actually his 2nd retirement of the season, 2nd consecutive retirement in 2 races for Glenn Miles. So the America's leg of the GT3 World Challenge not going according to plan for the driver of the green Playboy Racing Cadillac.
The snot bubble.
Yeah, it's snot green, isn't it? I think that's what we tend to call it. I mean, Mr. Bean's got a pea green Mini, but that is really a snot green Cadillac.
You do get in our voice chat during the races, snot bubble inside, watch out.
Yeah, I think a few nicknames for a few drivers come up rather quickly in their cars over the course of the season. Although that being said, there are some guys that put in quite a lot of effort into their liveries on their cars. These two guys on screen, the race leaders, are no exception. Brenton Foley spends quite a lot of time getting his liveries completed. Lewis Wedding as well. It's quite a lot of work goes into the liveries, especially I think I heard Foley, for the livery that he's done for the ARW DRMs, has spent upwards of about 3 or 4 hours doing that livery. So certainly dedicated to the cause. Let's go back.
I took a preference towards doing simpler liveries, and it turned out I was spending twice as long doing them because you don't have anywhere to hide the tiny little mistakes that you do.
No, that's right.
You do make. So as soon as you start stripping back, I did Dwayne's the JPS supercar for him, and that took about 5 hours. Just because it's so plain, if something's off on one side, you're going to notice it.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was an exhausting night.
Now, I've noticed that Brendan Ross is the first of the second stoppers again. So he's come in at the end of lap 27. He's off the back of Lewis Wedding. Can he get home from here? Because it's
Yeah, he should make it from here.
So he's going for a longer third sector, trying the undercut to see if he can get ahead of Wedding, going for a long third sector. In actual fact, he's only just exited the pit lane. And he's got a drive-through penalty as well. Oh, that's heartbreak for Brendan Ross. So he must have had an issue getting on and off pit road in terms of how quickly he got onto the pit lane and how quickly he drove out. That is going to probably drop him behind Steve Bolger, I think, when all this might be said and done. We'll have to wait and see how it all pans out, but that is not what he wanted. And Lewis Wedding probably will have seen that, and I reckon a little grin may have just come across his face because he's probably realised that his nearest competitor in the GT3 World Challenge is looks likely to set to finish behind him for sure at this particular rate, and that's provided Wedding doesn't cop a penalty himself.
Yeah, and don't have any word on what specifically happened there. I'd say he's just dropped the limiter a bit early, but sometimes AMS does have niggling little issues with that only seem to catch FCR drivers out.
And Steve Bolger's coming in now as well from fourth place, or what was fourth place.
That will be interesting to see where Bolger is in relation to Ross after the drive-through penalty. They should be quite close. If anything, I'd say Bolger a few seconds ahead.
So Brendan Ross now is currently down at turn 13, so just coming through the replica stadium or arena complex. As we said, these sequence of corners through here modelled on the arena complex at Hockenheim, just not the same sort of sweeping bends that they are. There's a few sort of different angles on the corners, but that's what it's supposedly mimicked on. So where's Steve Bolger at the moment? So Bolger in the pits, and Ross is just coming around now. So if I was Brendan Ross, I'd be serving this drive-through immediately and getting it over and done with. And indeed he is, because he may even go past Steve Bolger in the lane. And in fact, no, Bolger's exiting the lane now. So there's the length of the pit straight between him at the minute, although that's going to be set to grow. Made sure he stopped on the marks for the lane, and it seems like an eternity, the pit lane speed limiter here for Brendan Ross. So drivers still ahead of him to stop: Heath Dixon, Andy Simpson, Josh Ben, Oz Rob, Wedding, Foley and Devonish. Although Devonish and Foley are on the main straight now, in actual fact they're yet to stop, so they probably won't lap Brendan Ross, but very, very close. Not much distance between the man who's currently in 9th place and the last of the lead lap runners and the leading pair.
Yeah, definitely not going as well as it could have there for Ross, but staying on the lead lap is very important at this stage. That means he doesn't have to worry about anyone behind him, or if the leaders are racing each other, he doesn't have to try and stay out of it, and he can just focus on getting back up to Bolger.
Wedding is in. So Lewis Wedding is in, having realised what's happened to not only Brendan Ross, but also with Steve Bolger coming in. Brenton Foley potentially looking like he's going to be in this lap as well. The question will be whether or not Devonish decides to cover that off and mimic it, because he hasn't been able to break away from Foley, has Will Devonish. So I'd say he's probably going to either A, have to come in the same lap, and B, or B, he's going to have to do what he did last time around, and that's literally drive up to the back of Foley and pass him.
Yeah, there was a couple laps between their first stops, so at this point the best strategy is to run as long as possible. As Foley gets a massive slide there.
Yeah, just tried to stay a bit too close to Devonish, and we've seen this before with Foley. As the tyres start to wear down in the stint with the rear-wheel drive cars, with his driving style, it's sort of not conducive to the way he wants to drive. He tends to like to put the power down as early as he can, and the limited amount of traction control that these cars have, it wants to swap ends on him. Now, he will be in this lap, is he? Oh, a little bit wide there at final turn. Brendan Ross, another penalty. Oh, this has gone from bad to worse for the driver of the 444. In actual fact, the race leaders have gone through again, and Foley's around! Foley's around! And that's probably a gift that Will Devonish needed as well, because that is a huge amount of distance between those two. And if we go back a bit further to 5th and looking at 5th and 6th, that'll be the interesting battle to see what happens a bit further on back here, I would imagine. I'm not sure if I'm being reliably informed or not. Only a few moments ago, Steve Bolger's quite happily soldiering along here in what is effectively P7, and if having that 7th place advantage over Brendan Ross wasn't enough, Josh Ben, where's he at the moment? So he's right behind Brendan Ross at the moment. Now, I'm just wondering whether or not Josh Ben has actually stopped for a second time, because if he has, Andy Simpson drive-through penalty as well. So they're coming thick and fast now, are the penalties.
I'd say for the most part they are just for track extending. It is very easy on exit of a lot of corners, as I have said, so not ideal, but at the same time it is the same for everyone, and those who don't get the penalties are, well, they're generally the ones who win because they haven't got the penalties because they've been sticking to the track. So it's the same situation for everyone. It is annoying, but at the same time, those who deal with it better are the ones who are going to have the success. So it really should be the main concern for a lot of people, is finding the limits where you will get a warning for track extending and just pushing to 90% of that every lap.
That's right. That's what it's all about. As you said before, it's all about pacing yourself. Now, Brendan Ross comes in. Also, they're coming in. Sorry, that's not Glenn Miles. That's Brian Walsh coming as well. So that's going to hold Rossi up a little bit. Josh Ben, I'm reliably informed, has stopped for the second time. So this is a gain for him, a net gain up to 8th place. Heath Dixon in the lane as well. So, in actual fact, Steve Bolger came into the lane as well. So I'm not sure what happened to Steve Bolger there, because he had stopped, and now Brendan Ross is actually not too far behind him.
Forgetting to take tyres when he stopped.
I'm not 100% sure there. Maybe he didn't take enough fuel or something. But either way, he's stopped for a third time. He still stays ahead of Brendan Ross.
Gives Ross a lot to chase now, though.
Oh, it certainly does. Well, let's go back and have a look at our race leaders. Okay, both the race leaders are in, so they're in on the same lap. So this will be interesting now too, because, as you said, Scruff, a bit earlier, Devonish came in a lap later than Foley, so therefore should have a little bit less fuel drop to go. As we're just watching there, Brian Walsh is touring down the lane. Osrob's going to go through and take the lead of this race. He is yet to stop. Behind him, Devonish is on the move. Foley is still stationary. Now Foley's on the move. So that gap is pretty much as it was. Actually, in fact, it might even be a little bit bigger, and I think it is. It is a little bit bigger back to Brenton Foley. So that spin off the final corner a couple of laps ago has really cost Foley and cost him dearly. It's cost him the lead of this, or what would be the lead of this race once Osrob comes in to stop for the final time. We plug that into our calculations here for as they stand. So your title protagonists, Foley is currently third, which will end up being a net second. Wedding currently fourth, will end up being a net third once Osrob has stopped. And Brendan Ross, well, at the moment he's eighth, so we're going to plug that in as P8 because we suspect that when Osrob comes out, he'll be ahead, given that Brendan Ross has had to serve a couple of drive-throughs. Changes the point scenario dramatically. It means that Wedding goes into the lead and leads from Brendan Ross by 12 points, and then a further 3 points back to Foley. So Foley really needs to get past Devonish and start to eat into this advantage that Brendan Ross has basically handed to him by virtue of being off the road and having all those sorts of drive-through penalties. Foley really needs a win to capitalise. A win for him would actually move him ahead of Brendan Ross and put him 10 points off Wedding as it stands where they are right now. So finishing position for Foley is really super important right now. He really needs to drive up to the back.
So he's just brought that gap down by several tenths in the second sector. So Foley definitely on the move here.
22 minutes and change to go. We suspected we were going to get somewhere between 41 and 45 laps, and we've had some green flag running the whole entire way. So I dare say that the lap count is probably going to be on the higher side of that estimate rather than the lower side. As we're about to finish lap 32. And Devonish gets across the line, so his outlap was a 3:05.9. Foley's outlap was a 3:03.9. 2 seconds difference between Devonish and Foley in the outlap. As Andy Simpson gets another penalty, the drive-through could only be another track violation. Foley very deep at turn 1, so you're right, Scrub, pushing as much as he can. But
he's just trying to do qualifying laps here, I'd say.
He's got to. He's got no choice. He's got to do qualifying laps. Importantly for Devonish as well, he's got lap traffic between himself and Foley as well in the form of Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh with some sim rig dramas earlier today as well. Actually, in fact, the seat rails broke and having to screw it back together. Imagine a trip to the hardware store to get what he needed to sort that out. Does the right thing though, gets out of the way. So very little impediment for Foley. Gap at the minute.
Just worked out for Foley there. If he was a little bit further behind Walshy, that could have been messy going around that kink.
Yep, and Wedding has, and everyone's moved up now. So Osrob's now into a net P4. So going a little bit longer and ends up ahead of Andy Simpson, who's actually served that penalty now, has Andy Simpson. So Osrob with a P4. Good, solid drive from him at the moment. Simpson 5th, Josh Ben 6th, Bolger 7th, Brennan Ross 8th, and just going back through the field here, where is Steve Bolger? So Brennan Ross has really closed in on the back of Steve Bolger here, and the next man up the road for these guys is Josh Ben, some 14.5 seconds up the road. Now, having already stopped, that'll be a bit of a challenge for Brennan Ross to get up to the back of him in the remaining 20 minutes.
Lap times between those two, at least for the best lap, are fairly close. So I'd say that 7th is the best as Ross can do here.
I think you're probably right. He's just got to learn to pick the right spot here to size up Steve Bolger between now and the end of the race and plug everything into the calculations. Oh.
Foley half a second quicker through the final sector than Devonish there.
Still finding time is Brenton Foley. This is the thing. When he pushes Brenton Foley, he really knows how to wring the neck of a car and find that little bit of extra performance. His freakish ability to be able to do that is quite astonishing. We've seen it in the practice races we've been doing for the ARW DRM season coming up. He can get the car sideways and still make lap time. Quite incredible with the way that he's able to drive that car and still find time where we think, oh no, surely that's going to cost him some time, and you come across the line and you go, how on earth is that possible?
It's sickening.
It's sickening.
I tell him this every single time.
It's sickening, but it's highly entertaining. I guess he is the entertainment factor in a number of these series, especially in ARW, is becoming a highlight reel. And he's starting to do the same thing here. I like this. He was the gentleman that I looked at last season in AMS Oz when he came in the Pro-Am ranks and started to learn the craft and start to get promoted up the order and started to get quicker and quicker, and now he finds himself in the pro category. Much the same as what Brendan Ross has done this year. So he worked himself into it last year, but this year's been really his time to shine, where he's sort of really shown what he can do, and it will end up being a pro driver as opposed to a Pro-Am driver by the end of the year. And in actual fact, for Brendan Ross, he really showed his hand early on in this season, the Bathurst 3 hour, where he was hunting down Xeris and Foley, who were teaming up in an ARW Bentley for the win, and Brendan Ross in the Mercedes was always quicker, always finding lap time, but couldn't quite put the whole race together. Ended up making a couple of mistakes, which ultimately gave the track position to Foley and Xeris, and the gap that was needed for them to win the race at the end of it all. But he really showed pace throughout that whole race, did the man in the 444 Mercedes, but he just couldn't keep those mistakes in check.
Yeah, there was a point during the Supercars season last year where he really did turn a corner with his driving, and he still had a lot of rough edges, but the pace was there. And then can't remember exactly when it was, during GT3 we were talking on Discord and told him to try my car, and he was doing alright. I said,
Simpson in the pits.
I'll throw a contract. Oh, Foley's around.
Oh, Foley around. He is around, you're right. We were just watching Andy Simpson and Osrob there for a moment because Simpson came into the pits, but what on earth has happened to Foley? That's a most unusual spot to be going around.
Just pushing too hard. There is a bit of a bump there, and he would have been pushing, and it just unsettled the car at the worst moment.
Where is he on the circuit? He's up here at turn 8 and 9. Oh, he took too much curb. That's what it was. Took way too much curb at turn number 8. So turn number 9. But it did a full 360 and he managed to get going. So that's all it was. Too much curb. And he's now deep at turn 12 as well, as we're just cutting back onto live pictures. So all that hard work is gone. It's evaporated.
Devonish, who did pit at the same time, Foley has used, I wouldn't say significantly, but he has definitely used a noticeable amount more tyre, given they've only been going for 5 laps.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So that does put it into perspective just how hard Foley is having to try and drive this car. And I think he'll probably still be pushing. He'll think he can still close this gap down if I know Foley. And unfortunately I do, and he never really seems to back off.
Yeah, I'll have a look at the lap times.
We had the final last season at Albert Park, and
206.
we told him he just needs to be in like 9th place, I think it was, to win the championship, and he got up to 7th and was going, how fast is the car ahead? I need to catch him. We're just going, dude, calm down.
It's like when you're a racing driver, that's all you want to worry about, isn't it? Now, Foley's got to be careful here because Wedding's only 6.5 seconds behind with 15 minutes to go. Now, what's Wedding's lap times like there, Scruff? Because he's just been slowly chipping away, and now that Foley's made a mistake or two, Wedding probably be eyeing off this second place if Foley makes another mistake. He's going to be right there.
Previous lap, Wedding got a track cut, but his best lap is about half a second off what Foley's done, which was a 2:01.8, which is bloody fast.
Absolutely right. That is flying. That's like getting towards the sort of times we were seeing in qualifying. Well, at the moment, with just on 14.5 minutes remaining, Will Devonish is the man who leads, and if he wins this race, he would be the next winner in the series. But not only that, he would then become the 6th different winner in 8 races for this season. So it goes to show the amount of the difference in winners we've had this season. We've only had one repeat winner the whole entire season, as we said, and that's Lewis Wedding with 3 wins. He won the very first race, Barcelona, won the 4th race at Japan, and he won the 7th race at Interlagos. So he won the opening races of each of the 3 legs to date. If that's any sort of pattern, that means he's not going to get another race win, but don't discount him out of a win at Road America coming up in a couple of weeks' time.
Foley's still absolutely hammering it. So it looks like Lewis has had an issue as well. He's got a track cut on this lap, and that gap has stretched a little bit between him and Foley. 2:03.1
to a 2:02.1 out in front, so Foley a second quicker that time around than Devonish, so don't discount that from happening. And you're right, I think Wedding has had an issue this last time around. Yeah, he did get a track violation, no time set on our screen, but he has lost a lot of track time to the man in second place. Working back through the order, Osrob a lonely 4th at the moment. Andy Simpson had come in to stop again, so we don't know why that was the case, but that's promoted Josh Ben up to P5. Steve Bolger up to P6. Brendan Ross is now 7th, so that's one less place that he needs to worry about, although he has dropped away from the back of Steve Bolger quite considerably in this last little stanza. Simpson's come on in 8th. Heath Dixon is 9th. He's the last man on the lead lap. Brian Walsh, the last of the classified runners, in 10th place and a lap down. It was actually pretty good for Brian Walsh, being a lap down overall 2 laps overall on the race leader. Sorry, it's a lap behind Heath Dixon, 2 laps to the race leader. So still pretty good for Brian Walsh. And the pace that he's shown to only be 2 laps off the race lead after 90 minutes.
Not an easy track either to keep getting around. There's so many points on it that you, as we've seen with Foley, is spun twice. There are so many points where you can lose the rear of the car and go around on this track, just with all the dips on apexes. And and stuff, if you are offline and try and get on the power, the car just wants to go.
That's right. Well, we've seen that at turn 1 with Foley going round actually on his outlap for qualifying. There's the section over turn 10 where they say falling off the edge of the world is what they call it. You come over the crest and over the rise at the curb, and then the earth just literally falls away from you as your head plunge down towards the hairpin at turn 11. 3.6 seconds now, the gap out in front. Foley still not giving up hope with 11 and a quarter minutes on the clock between now and the end of the race. So he keeps this pace up, he's going to be right with him, but the question will be, what does he have to fight with at the end of it all?
He's got plenty of tyre on the car at the moment from the data I've got on screen, so I'll just check Devonish. Yeah, there is a bit of a difference between them, but it's not massive.
Down to 3.2 through the first sector, timing split, so it's coming down. Do you think Will's just driving within himself here just to make sure he's got enough to fight with at the end of it all?
I think it's going to be a combination of things. I think Will be trying to definitely save some tyre, so if Foley does catch him, he will have something to fight with. But at the same time, he's been in the tow the entire race. He was behind Foley for 90% of the race before Foley's spin, so he could still just be trying to find his feet out by himself. It is really difficult to find a rhythm by yourself after you've been in the tow of someone for so long. Like
having a carrot, they like to call it. The carrot dangles in front of you. You've got somebody to measure yourself against or something to chase. You can follow in their wheel tracks, you can stay with them, and you can pace yourself to what they're doing out in front. But some people will excel, like you take Lewis Wedding, for example, at Barcelona. Once he had the lead, he romped away to a 30-second win. He's basically operating like a metronome, whereas here, maybe Will's just one that needs to have a bit of time to, or someone to run with, I guess, to pace against. That being said, Brenton Foley only took a tenth out of Will in the second sector. Oh, Will a bit wide there, and Foley even worse, and Foley's gone off! He gets back onto the circuit.
I don't think that would have cost him more than a tenth.
Oh, it was very, very worrying moment for Brenton Foley. We just caught it in the back of shot. That
final sector, Foley is absolutely destroying Devonish, so that gap's down to 2 seconds.
On the onboard cam here with Brenton Foley through the second to last corner. What happened? Missed the apex, let go of the throttle, and then squirmed on him. That really squirmed on him, that car.
Tough corner, that one too. You cannot see the apex until you're already turning in and got the car pointed at it.
Yeah, on top of it. Well, when we were cycling through the broadcast cameras as well, we went to Foley's helmet cam, you could actually see how low Foley was sitting in that particular car as well. It's like a boat. You're not being able to see the steering wheel.
He does have cushions in there.
No, I think
he puts the camera. He actually grows a beard before racing. Just puts a GoPro on it.
Well, the gap is now 1.2 seconds. So you're right, Scruff. It didn't cost him very much.
He actually gained, I think, over a second in the final sector. So
a little bit cheeky there, I imagine too.
He's got a lot of speed in that final sector, it seems, because he's been gaining around a second a lap, and most of it. Well, he's been gaining a tenth or two first sector, a tenth or two second sector, and then absolute load in the final sector. So that Bentley in the triple or quadruple right-hander, it is the point I'd say it's doing most of the catching through there.
You're right. Speaking of Bentleys, the other PBF car is having a good run as well. Josh Ben slipped past Ozrob for 4th place on the road. So those two have already stopped and they'll go to the flag. They've just got some traffic ahead in Brian Walsh, but Josh Ben now romping away from Ozrob quite comfortably for P4. So good return. He's gone deep there as well.
We've had something happen to Ross as well. I'm not sure if he got another penalty after Bulger's mysterious.
He's dropped back behind Andy Simpson.
But yeah, he's lost 22. He was about a second behind Bulger, now it's 22 seconds. So.
Foley, quickest lap of the race, 2:01.6 as we just cycle through the field and see what's happened to Brennan Ross. Yeah, you're right, there he is on screen in 8th place, 6.9 seconds behind Andy Simpson, who does have a drive-through penalty over his head, so you'll get that 7th place back. We pick up the leading pair. Again, nothing in this. Throw a blanket over it. Less than 7 minutes remaining. Foley throwing down the gauntlet to Devonish, or trying to stick his nose in there before they got to the S's, but he wasn't close enough to do it, and that very nearly became a disaster. if he was any closer, because it would have turned
Really,
him with the front man around.
you really see the difference of those two cars through that first sector as well. As they're going through the first couple corners, the Bentley faster at the high speed, and then as soon as it tightens up a bit, that Lamborghini able to stretch
Here we
back
go.
out a bit.
Here we go. Down the inside comes Foley. He committed the move very, very early. And Devonish will have the wider line. He could get on the power a little bit earlier. Foley takes over the lead of this race with 6 minutes 15 seconds to go. Devonish now pulls out alongside down the straight here. Who's got the Mumbo in the straight line? And it's the Lamborghini that's got the Mumbo in the straight line. Draws alongside. Has the inside line for turn 12. Can he get it stopped? He can. But he does the same thing he did last time. Just gets a bit too close to the outside of the circuit. Couldn't get the power down early enough in the Lambo. Foley right round the outside. Switches onto the inside now for 15 and 16.
Third time in this race we've seen that from these two. Foley being forced around the outside and somehow managing to pull it off.
Josh Ben now with a penalty as well. That's going to hand fourth place back to Ozrob. So as quickly as he picked that fourth place up, he's going to surrender it.
Looks like Simpson has taken his drive through as well. He's just
certainly
dropped
has.
behind Ross.
He certainly has. He's come out on the road behind. And in actual fact, Heath Dixon's gone through on Andy Simpson as well. So that's good news for Brendan Ross in terms of having an extra... Andy Simpson being as quick as he is, having an extra car in between himself and Simpson. So this stage, barring any further penalties, Brendan Ross set to finish 7th on the road. Devonish down the inside at turn 1, and Foley's around. Foley was in the weeds, he was in the marbles, and with just under 5 minutes remaining. Oh no, there's a collision at the turn 1. Whoa, my goodness gracious me. So not only did Foley go around, he collected Wedding. Wedding has literally shat himself. Round goes Foley. So that was a fair pass from Devonish. And then as we wait, and you wait to see Wedding come into picture, crunch. Now the question's going to be, has Wedding got any damage to that McLaren? Because that was a hard lick. That was an absolutely hard lick.
It looked like that may have just got the right part of Lewis's car for him to get away largely unscathed in terms of performance.
We're going to have a look at the broadcast camera when we get the next shot of that particular side of the car, which won't be until we sort of get up to turn 13 and 14. Actually, no, there it is there. Yeah, there's a nice big dint in that door. Just on that trackside camera, you can see it. So, looks like he might have gotten away with it.
Yeah, right there. It generally won't be too bad of an issue. It looks far worse than it is in game.
Yeah, here it is here.
As we've had Simpson DNF from the race.
Yep, so there it is there. You can see it in the driver's door. That's where the damage is. Andy Simpson out of this race. So the fourth retirement of this race. Brian Walsh might be able yet to get onto the 9th place position with only a handful of laps remaining. Well, that certainly alters things in this championship. If they stay where they are, Wedding's going to extend his lead, not only over Brendan Ross, but over Foley as well. It might actually potentially drop Foley, or Foley would need a miracle in the last race to stay in contention. So we're going to get probably another 3 laps here, as Devonish got across the line with about 3 minutes and 7 seconds on the clock. So we've got a 2-minute lap. So we've got this one here, lap 42, and then there'll be a little bit of time on the clock when he starts 43. And then the clock will go 0 during lap 43, and then there'll be one more after that. So 44 laps. Looks like it's set to be the distance for this 90-minute race. So just inside the window we predicted, 41 to 45 was the window we suggested, and yet again we're pretty much spot on with where we expected it to be.
Well, I mean, I don't like to take too much credit, but I mean, I haven't commentated the series since season 1, but we'll gloss over that.
We'll gloss over that. No, it's always good to have you have you back in the box, Scruff. It's good to get some insight, seeing that you drive these cars during the season. You tend to do more driving than I do these days, so having your insight's always valuable.
We've been robbed a little bit of what was looking to be an absolutely fantastic finish between Devonish and Foley there, so not a lot to say at this point. No real battles out on track. Foley and Wedding are the two closest. unless you count Walsh trying to catch Simpson, but I think we can ignore that one.
I think you're probably right. I think we can probably ignore that one. The only one that I'll probably be focused in on is whether or not Foley's going to be able to hone in on Lewis Wedding in the next 2 and a bit laps. He's 2.1 seconds behind at the moment, but I don't know if he's got anything left for Lewis after this. Although a bit further behind, let's have a look and see if there's any other battles going on. So, I mean, Ozrob and Josh Ben are the only other battle that could really change. I mean, Ben's been quick, but Ozrob's got the track position, having with Josh Ben having had to serve a drive-through penalty. So the race leader now to the line with just over a minute remaining. So to start lap 43.
Foley, I've just got word, is having
Wedding penalty!
drama.
Wedding has got a penalty. He must have gone across the road. Just came up. He must have not. He must have just clipped too much curb off of the final corner.
I was watching as they went through there, and he did look to grab a lot of curb there. But the saving grace for Wedding is Foley. He is questioning how much fuel he's got for the remainder of the race here.
Foley is questioning how much fuel he's got. Well, that's going to be interesting. Well, Foley, if I was Foley, I'd be backing off right about now because he knows that Lewis has got this penalty. And now, the question's going to be, does Lewis decide to serve it now, or does he decide that he decides to take it as a post-race penalty? Because he has the ability to take it as a post-race penalty now, given that the clock is literally about to expire. It's going to be probably, I'd say, a 30-second penalty, if memory serves me correctly, Scruff, because we haven't had to apply one of these for a while.
Sorry, what was that?
30-second penalty for a drive-through if you don't take it before the end of the race, in the last couple of laps.
The game does it automatically. I think I've had one before. I think it is 30 seconds.
All right, so that will. So as long as Foley can stay within, with Foley's managing fuel, if he can stay within 30 seconds of Wedding, which I think he should be able to do, he will take second place. So not all bad news for Foley after this, but he won't lose as many points to Wedding if that's the case. In actual fact, he'll actually gain 4 points if that's the case. So
Wedding, it does need to be looked at, the rejoin from Foley at turn 1 too. So
I suspect
this
you're
race
right.
will continue on for a while afterwards in terms of second and third place.
Yeah, so there might be a little bit further explanation required there, I think, from the stewards afterwards. So, as I said, everything provisional until it's all done and dusted in the stewards' rooms afterwards. This man's
Wedding takes the penalty and misses the
he's missed the lane. He's missed the lane. Now, normally you get penalised if you decide to if you decide to reverse on track like that, but he's gotten away with it. Now, the next question will be he's put the pit limiter on nice and early, so he's elected to decide to take that now. Probably a smart move.
It's cheaper than
trying to...
with a clean pit entry, it's cheaper.
Yeah, with a clean pit entry, it's cheaper. Now, he's got no threat from behind, so Ozrob was the next man further behind, but he's only just coming through the back end of the stadium section now. With Josh Ben in hot pursuit. Now, Josh Ben started to chop that margin down, but I don't think he's going to be close enough for a move by the end of it all. Let's rejoin our race lead up at the top end of the circuit. Now, he's coming up to the back of Heath Dixon in the ARW Bentley. He's got that much margin, it's not funny. He can just afford to cruise at home from here. Doesn't even need to worry about lapping the Bentley because his last 3 races, including this one, have been particularly strong. 4th place at Abu Dhabi, 2nd place at Interlagos, and he's finally going to get that win that he was looking relatively good for during Barcelona when he was having the fight with Lewis Wedding as Heath Dixon gets out the way, ultimately before he disconnected from the race session. So this one's been coming for a while, I think, for Will, and he'll be mightily glad to greet that checkered flag in 4 corners time. So through 17 and 18, the multi-corner mimicked on the Istanbul turn 8. 2 corners from home, 2 left-handers, and that's all that stands between the Lamborghini driver and the checkered flag. The 6th race winner out of 8 races this season, Will Devenish, Belong and Lamborghini have done it, and they chalk up the first win for them on the season. Great job Brenton Foley will come home in second place, although there is going to be a question mark over that rejoin at turn number 1 as to what happens from here. We'll wait to see how that all shapes up. Lewis Wedding is going to come home third, so he'll maintain his advantage at the top of the point standings. So great drive from Lewis from the back of the field to take third spot on the podium. Looks like Ozrob is going to hold off Josh Ben for 4th place and 5th place. And there's quite some considerable margin from the rest of the drivers at the moment. In actual fact, Josh Ben hasn't given up hope here. Maybe a late lunge if he's close enough, if Ozrob makes a mistake. He really has honed in on the back of him, but no, not quite close enough is the 015 to the 555, so Ozrob will just sneak home in 4th place from Josh Ben. 6th place is going to go to Steve Bolger. That was looking like a promising drive for a while, but he had a late 3rd stop, which we're a little bit unsure as to why that was the case, but nonetheless, he has finished in 6th place. Brendan Ross, it all went horribly wrong for him in that second half of the race. 7th place finish it will be for the man, the 444 FCR Motorsport, and I think already starting to take out his disgust on the rear tyres just by lighting it up out of some of the corners. Heath Dixon's going to finish in 8th place, and he's already lapped him through, and Brian Walsh, the last man to cross the line, or he was lapped actually, he finishes in 9th place. Andy Simpson, DNF, Glenn Miles DNF, Lime Mitch DNF, and the first man that DNF'd was Rhodey. So Brendan Ross now decides he's going to finish this race backwards, which I believe is perfectly legal, and yes it is, and a J-turn to boot. Nicely done. But the winner of this race, Will Devonish, superb job, as Foley tries to do a bit more for the broadcast cameras, but I'm not having any of it. We're going to wait and see how these drivers decide to come up and see us. And as a matter of fact, they are up here to see us. And we're going to start from the bottom up. We're going to start with Lewis Wedding. So, Lewis, last minute entry into the race. You had to start from the back, but you've managed to come up all the way from the back to 3rd place and maintain your lead at the head of the standings.
Yeah, that was... Yeah, I got to apologise actually to my fiance because I was a bit grumpy trying to put the rig together. I was just adjusting. I wanted to adjust where I sat to be closer to the wheel, and to do that, I also had to change my pedals and change everything about it. So I was a bit grumpy having to go through that, and things weren't going right where they wanted to be, or they wouldn't go in properly. So it's a bit grumpy for a little while, but got in just. I hadn't done any practice. The only laps I've done of the track is when I was actually testing the track and just to make sure that it would work. But yeah, I'm a bit surprised. Towards the end of that race, I was sort of running similar pace to the front two. It was just I think it was just the first sort of stint where I was battling past people that really sort of ruined my chances for a victory. But still, to finish in 3rd, even with the drive-through and before the drive-through, about 8 seconds off the lead. Quite happy with that, especially with no practice. I just nicked the setup from I think Monza or something like that, and that I was testing with a while ago, and happened to be okay. Would have made a couple other changes if I had time and tested, but didn't do it. But still, yeah. Aside from the track cuts, didn't really make a mistake except for the little half spin. So pretty good effort.
Yeah, we'd seen a couple of moments where the car wanted to swap ends on you, and you did a great job to save it. I think through turn 17 and 18 springs to mind as to one of those moments. Probably the moment of the race, I think, was a couple of laps from home with being clattered into the side of by Brenton Foley with his rejoin at turn 1. And I think we shut up here in the box that you probably just shat yourself when you got a big, a rude wake-up call in the left-hand door.
I knew. I think Rhodey had told me that you'd had an off, and I didn't know what was where it exactly was. I saw his car sort of on the entry at turn 1 there, but I thought he would have been a little bit further on the other side, and I didn't see or hear anything of him until I heard a loud bang. And normally when you hear that crash noise, it means he gets severe damage or have had a big crash. But he didn't spin back around again when I saw in the mirrors, and thankfully he hit me in the door, so he didn't hit the suspension or anything like that. It didn't have any lasting effect, so bit of a surprise. But thankfully I didn't have too much damage, and I don't think Foley had too much damage either.
Yeah, no, I think you're both able to continue, which was the important thing. So, I mean, it looked like it was a pretty hard lick, but looks like the damage was only superficial, and you're both able to continue, which is the important thing. Now, the most important thing for you is, well, provisionally with the point standings, you go into the final round at Road America with an 11-point advantage over Brenton Ross and a 15-point advantage over Brenton Foley. So it shrunk a little bit. But your thoughts on looking forward to Road America?
I'm not looking forward to it at all. I think the McLaren is going to get absolutely pasted. The down the straight here, I struggled big time against Bentleys and Mercedes when I come across them. So Road America, quite open. There's no real sections, say here, like in the first sector or the last sector, where I was able to sort of stick with people. Here at COTA, so I'm probably gonna have to do quite a lot of testing and put a lot of work in if I want to get probably a top 3, because I don't see my car being fast enough to get the win. It's just doesn't have that power. So I might have to try some radical things with wings and stuff like that just to keep up. But obviously with me being ahead means it's game on, and being double points as well means I'm going to have to take a bit of risk, obviously not being as quick, and Foley and Ross being in a quicker and more suited car to that track. It's going to make for a pretty tense final round, I'd say.
It sure is. The interesting thing, as you said there, the extra points on offer for the 2-hour endurance event. So, well, best of luck. Looking forward to Road America in a couple of weeks' time. And
Cheers,
our attention now turns to second place man, Brenton Foley. So, Brenton, great race-long battle with Will. You guys were pretty much like, as I said this to Scruff, you guys were pretty much anchored like you were working on a chain gang for majority of that race. You guys were never separated by more than about 1.5 or 2 seconds, and everything we've seen from both of you was clean and fair. Unfortunately for you, a couple of mistakes crept in just towards you getting ready for that second stop, and unfortunately that was what decided the race at the end of the day.
Yeah, pretty much. I have to start by apologising to Lewis, obviously. I completely didn't see him. I knew he was coming, but I had no idea where he was. I couldn't see him on the screen or the mirrors. So, yeah, I'm probably going to get a penalty for an unsafe rejoin there. But, yeah, it's completely on me. I should have waited. But, yeah, as you said, coming up to that second stop, I planned to come in a lap earlier than what I did. And coming around the third and second last corner, I saw that Josh was in the pit lane. So I kind of had a mild panic attack and not realising that he was actually exiting, and I thought he was still in the box. So I went round again, and in my haste to try and work out fuel numbers and all that, I just had a spin. And, yeah, from then on made it pretty hard work for me. And, yeah, the following spins were me just pretty much trying too hard. I knew I had some really good pace and had a little spin while I was trying to catch up Will, and then when I caught to Will, I'd destroyed the rear tyres, and yeah, from there it was just more mistakes.
Yeah, it certainly was, and we did see, I guess, like we like to call it, your Larry driving style with lighting up the rear tyres and doing all you can, putting the power down as early as you possibly could to try and bridge the gap to the man at the front in Will Devonish for most of the times that you had to play catch up. Did that sort of tend to take the tyre life away and not leave you very much to fight with that led to some of those mistakes, or did you still have enough in reserve, you just decided it was time to turn up the wick?
I don't know, when I got onto the last set and I was trying to chase him down, the car just completely hooked up. I don't know if the track went up a level with the grip or anything like that, but the car was just perfect for me. And yeah, as I said, trying that hard was destroying the rear tyres a little bit, and then when I got to him and started battling him, I tried to go for the over and under the crisscross at turn 1, but when you're offline, there's no grip at all, and I lit him up and just spun around.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for you, a second place finish, when you're probably in need of a good race win there to try and cut down the gap to Lewis as much as possible. But you're certainly not out of it. Provisionally, you've got the gap down to 15 points, so you're still in this hunt heading forward to Road America. Now, we've heard Lewis's thoughts on Road America. What do you think about when you think of that in 2 weeks' time?
Every other car I've driven it in, I've thoroughly enjoyed it and liked, and I was pretty quick there. But I haven't driven the Bentley there yet, so I'll see how it goes. If anything's to follow on from tonight, Circuit of the Americas is a track that I'm definitely not fond of. The pace surprised me, so hopefully I can carry that on.
Well, we certainly hope that you can, and we look forward to seeing what you can produce in a couple of weeks' time. Job well done on tonight.
Thanks very much.
Well, time for our race winner in Will Devonish. And Will, the last 3 races you've been working up to this. So 4th place Abu Dhabi, 2nd place last time out, and you finally got that race win under your belt in GT3 competition now, mate. Job well done.
Thanks, mate. The team's put a lot of work in this season, and I think we've been fastest or near about every race we've been to. We've just been really unlucky to the start of the season, so really happy to get a win under our belt.
Yeah, well, that's probably been, I guess, the story we've mentioned a couple of times now, is that your troubles throughout the season, your disconnects and having all sorts of issues with staying in the race, and over the last couple of rounds you've managed to stay in the race, and the results have started to come for you. The Lamborghini's definitely had some great pace. We've seen that from Steve Bolger as well last time out, where pace from the car itself has actually been quite good. You just hadn't been able to put it all together until the last couple of rounds. You finally just started to gel with the car?
No, I've always been sort of gelling with it. I think we've just been really unlucky at some of the times, and I like places like Sepang where I was leading most of the race, and then I just couldn't do math in the last part and bogged up a pit stop. But yeah, I did a lot of testing pre-season, and this car, even though I hated it before going into this, it seemed to suit me the most.
Well, for you, looking forward to Road America, what's your thoughts? I know you're out of the championship battle in terms of the top 3, but you do have something to fight for now. You've actually got you're within 11 points of Ozrob moving into the last race. So do you think we've seen that the Bentley's not too bad in a straight line, but also the Lamborghini's no slouch either, and there's plenty of long straights at the circuit?
Yeah, well, all tonight I was able to get at least a tenth of a second up on Foley on the straight. So Road America should be a good track for us. Admittedly, I've never actually raced there. So, and I never raced here tonight. I only did about 10 laps before practice tonight. So, yeah, it'll be new for me.
Certainly will, and we look forward to seeing what you can produce in 2 weeks. And again, congratulations on your win in GT3 tonight.
Thanks.
Well, Scruff, let's just digest what we've just seen. We've seen quite a number of late incidents that have really shaken up this championship. There's the top 3 at the front are still the top 3 at the front, that they've got it all to play for in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, definitely not the cleanest ending of that race for a lot of drivers out there, but it has thrown the championship up into the air quite a bit there. Rossi, you'd have to say, I'm not sure on the points, but you'd have to say he'll be having to settle for 3rd. But Foley and Wedding the last round, that one should be quite interesting pending any results from any potential penalties from tonight.
That's right. Well, let's have a quick look at the point standings as they are provisionally after tonight's race. So we're just going to load up the new graphic now. We just have been finished putting that point score together. So here it is, provisionally, points out of tonight. Lewis Wedding, 145 points, still heads the standings. 11 points back to Brendan Ross on 134. Foley now gets within earshot of Brendan Ross by 4 points by virtue of finishing ahead of him tonight by a couple of positions. So those top 3 have still got it all to play for, with a maximum 30 points on the table at the final round, as per the point structure for the 2-hour races. Ozrob, with his finish tonight, stays ahead of Jamie Snow and Greg Namble. Will Devonish is the big man on the move. He jumps up a couple of positions up into 5th place at 80 points. So 11 points behind Ozrob. So that'll be a nice battle to watch out for at Road America as well. And even though it says Brock Harvey there in the last place position in P10, that's actually Heath Dixon who's moved ahead of Brock Harvey. The points graphic just hasn't rolled over properly there. Surprisingly, Glenn Miles with his DNF is still inside the top 10, the leading Cadillac runner. So looking forward to seeing what comes out of next week with the penalties and so on and so forth, if any are to be applied from this particular race. And then in a couple of weeks' time, as we bring up the calendar, there it is, 23rd of June. Lock it into your calendars, the 2-hour endurance finale at Road America. Going to be a great finish to the season, and that's all we've got time for. This has been the 90 minutes of COTA, and we will see you next time. But until then, please always drive safely, and bye for now.